Yeah, we're off. Hi, guys. Stop it.
You invest in yourself and in others. You make the commitment. When time
Pete is leaving for a conference. Oh, we are live right now. I forgot we don't have the 30-second countdown this time. Um, anyway, folks, if you can hear us, if you can see us, please give us a thumbs up. I turned the 30-second countdown off and I forgot to turn it back on because
Hey, Diane, good to see ya.
with that we did with Olivier, we had some serious issues trying to get the live stream to work. And we finally just turned everything off that could be turned off. And we ran like a bare bones operation and we were able to limp through. So I see some thumbs up. So it looks like we are good to go. Our guest today probably doesn't need introduction for most of you folks. Pete Garcia. He writes for his own web blog on rev310.net. That's just the abbreviation for Revelation, REV. No spaces, 310, no semicolon, .net. And if you haven't been to that website, I encourage you to check it out, folks. Pete's also a frequent conference speaker, probably not as much in the past as it's going in forwards in the future. And he's been a regular guest on many YouTube programs, especially those that focus on Bible prophecy. We do have a couple prayer requests. Pete is leaving for a conference. Within a couple weeks, he's going to be going with Tom Hughes to Australia and New Zealand. Just pray that the Lord would give his blessings, journey mercies, and audience blessing with this opportunity. I do have.
I'll go and see Pete Garcia if he came down my way when he comes to Australia. I'd go and see him.
An upcoming meeting here this coming Sunday evening at Zion Lutheran in Maddox, North Dakota. It's going to be a wonderful time. It's one of those rare Lutheran churches that's a lot of the leadership and members and pastor are premillennial and either pre-trib or considering pre-trib. So pray the Lord would bless that opportunity. Now, I do want to say one other thing before we get started, and that's that we're a little short-handed this morning for our moderators. So if we happen to miss some of your questions, please have mercy on us. It's likely going to happen. So just getting that out of the way ahead of time. Well, let's get on to the program, folks. We're talking about the year 2024. We're talking about what's coming our way. What could we see? And there's also the question of what will we see? We know there are certain things that we are going to see, and there's lots of other things that we could see. And some of these issues that we know we're going to see, we don't really know what form they're going to come in. We just see them coming at us like a locomotive out of control. So, Pete, first question. What are some of the biggest issues on your mind that are looming on the horizon that could slam into America, slam into the American church, slam into the European, Canadian, Australian, worldwide church in the next year?
Well, thanks for having me back on, Lee. It's been a while, I guess, but definitely look forward to always getting time to spend with you, and getting to see you and Nita at the conference in October was a real blessing for me. So it's always good to see you guys.
Well, we appreciate having you on the program. We appreciate your fellowship, and we appreciate your ministry.
Thank you. And I guess for 2024, obviously the 500-pound gorilla in the room is going to be the election coming up this year, because that I think sets the stage for so many different things geopolitically, and it will probably cause or have a causative effect on what other nations decide to do or don't do, pending Donald Trump's re-entrance back onto the political stage. I do think that barring any type of, electoral or election tomfoolery, he seems likely to be the next president. I think rumor has it that Tucker Carlson may be his VP pick. I can see that, or I can see somebody he's going to align himself with somebody that's ideologically compatible with himself, rather than trying to coalesce a Republican coalition behind him like he did with Pence. Obviously that didn't play well toward the end of the end of the last election cycle. So I think that he'll be back in the office. I do think the Supreme Court will vindicate him in this, the ballot cases where states are trying to pull his name off the ballot. They'll probably overrule that. And so I think going forward, we're going to start to see other candidates dropping out, like Chris Christie just dropped out. I think DeSantis will be next, and so on and so forth. So, so that obviously will have ramifications for other nations and what they decide to do. I think, that may speak to whether China decides to reunify Taiwan back into their fold forcefully this year rather than, a decade down the road. If they think that Biden is out and they don't have a weak and confused America anymore, they're probably going to try and take advantage of the time they have now. That also speaks to some kind of closure happening with Russia, Ukraine. I think whatever, there's nothing good that's going to happen for Ukraine. I think at some point they're going to have to sue for peace, and then Russia may make in part of their demands, that the Zelensky government step down. They have to guarantee or put some guarantees in that they will never join NATO, and they may just say, okay, hey, what
Hey, Barry, good to see you, mate.
In terms of land, Crimea, and then the furthest east portions of Ukraine, we'll settle for just that because those countries have already identified as Russian. And so, that may be the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is that, obviously the West rejects those, and then we get further dragged into some kind of a conflict where a stray missile accidentally lands in Poland or some other NATO country and triggers Article 5 and then drags kind of Western Europe into this massive conflict with the United States in tow. So there's that. But, I do think that at some point there will be some sort of crisis this year, and they'll use that. If it looks like they can't stop Trump, they may use some type of crisis to derail the election. And, let's just play this out. Let's just say there is an election. Trump wins. You may see some of these West Coast states like California, Oregon, Washington say, hey, we're going to secede because we don't recognize the lawful authority of
wow, that's a possibility too, isn't it?
Of Donald Trump. He's not the real president. And we've heard them use this term over and over. He's not our real president. He's not my president, that kind of language. And then on the other side, if Trump loses, and it looks like it's really been some tomfoolery, some political shenanigans, some electoral misconduct that is very obvious, like in 2020, that may trigger something from the right where there's some type of uprising, which may trigger some type of martial law reaction. I don't know. I think it's going to be chaotic one way or the other. And I think that regardless of who wins at this next election, I think it's going to be consequential in a way that we haven't seen since 1860.
Yeah, I've had similar thoughts for this election.
Well, Diane, where were the parents? Where in the heck were the parents?
I don't see how we can't have political firestorm in a degree that we've never seen before. I mean, if we thought that the last election was a chaotic situation, I think we've seen nothing yet. Because it doesn't matter who wins this next election. whether the conservatives win and Donald Trump comes into office, or whether
Whoever.
a Democrat candidate wins and keeps us on more or less the same path. America's divided on these issues, deeply, deeply divided, and you can't stop the chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you and I would identify ourselves as monarchists. I mean, we know that Jesus is the only real solution to this world. But you've got right now the United States, which at this present time in the present world order that we exist in, you've got us more polarized as a population or as a nation than at any point I could think of in history. And the only other time I could think that we've been this polarized is going back to like 1860. Now, I know that there's been some tumultuous times in the past. Certainly in the 1920s, post-World War I time frame, leading into the Great Depression. There's been time periods in the 60s.
With Vietnam.
But, Vietnam, where we are today, we are so much more dissected and divided as a country over so many more issues than we've ever been. I don't see, this is the Humpty Dumpty thing. I mean, we've fallen off the wall. We're in a million pieces. How do you put that back together again? You've got two pieces fighting over who's going to take over the rest of the broken egg.
And especially with the millions of illegal immigrants, that's a broken Humpty Dumpty there.
And I don't know how we do that. And the only one that I know that can do that is Jesus.
Amen.
And so we know that he is coming back. And so we cling to that promise as our blessed hope.
Well, there's a few other issues I'd like to touch on, but before we move on, I'd like to just visit this political situation a little bit longer. Now, a lot of people are looking at, let's say if Trump comes into office, that's what they're really hoping for. They see in that the salvation of America, or at least preservation for a little bit while longer. Is there any potential spiritual downside that people are not foreseeing that could arise from the Republicans coming into power again?
That's a great question.
I think October 7th began to expose that in a way that we haven't seen in, I don't know, maybe since World War II or, before World War II. But you've seen within the conservative movement this divide over whether we should stand with Israel or not and keep that same level of, total support that we've had in the past with them. Given all of the drama surrounding Ukraine and the seemingly endless wars that we've been through for the last 30 plus years. So I think that's exposed a rift within the conservative base between those who view Trump as the solution to what ails us as a nation, and in terms of like inflation, cost of living, taxes, and just the returning to some sense of normalcy, back to the way the world used to be, versus those Christians who, like us, like this community, which is, I'd say, a pretty small community, where we recognize that how broken this world is, and that there's no political fix to this. You can't legislate morality.
Barry, Shawnee said something about Texas succeeding as well. She said something about that a couple of days ago. That Texas will succeed. I don't know how to say it. Secede.
You can't make people worship the one true God and embrace the 10 Commandments again and put them back on the school walls and put prayer back in school. We know that that's not going to. It's not going to happen. We've been a postmodern nation now for many decades, and we're rapidly embracing this paganization of this country to be in line with the rest of the world. So I don't see that trend changing, and frankly, Scripture doesn't say that it's going to either. Mm-hmm. There isn't some giant revival right before the rapture of the church. We know that there is a great soul harvest after the rapture.
Yes.
Once people realize what's happened, I think that's going to be a huge shock for the world population. But no, there's not this you know, if you hold to dominionism or kingdom.
I wonder where these guys are on tribulation. I don't know if it's pre, mid, or post.
Now theology or you know, any of these other kind of errant eschatological positions, you know, you're like, you know, chomping at the bit for Trump to get in because you think that's going to be part and parcel of your 7 Mountain Mandate, and you're going to be able to kind of ride that high, you know, ride that wave in and change everything so that Christ can return. Well, we know that the Bible doesn't teach that, and two, that's a very short-sighted perspective regarding where we are in time with respect to God's prophetic calendar. So I do think that there is some danger. Let's say that if Trump gets elected, and I think that there's going to be a huge swath of people in the middle who lean Republican or lean conservative, but aren't really that religious. And they're just going to kind of go back to doing what they've always done, you know, working, going on the lake, barbecuing, you know, spending time with family. None of those are bad. But it kind of.
Diane, you sound like Yoda. They are. Not they are pre they are. Thanks, Yoda.
It reinforces this normalcy bias that, well, you know, it was crazy a couple of years with Biden in there, but things will get back to normal. But we know that that's not going to happen. There is that danger that those folks do kind of go back into this normalcy bias because now the big enemy at the top has been removed, and they're going to ignore all of the rot and the corrosion at every other level of the U.S. underbelly because they have a president that they voted for and that won. So, you know, I don't know. I feel like there's that danger in that. There's also within Christian circles, you know, I say Christendom, that, and I'm talking everything from the very you know, liberal Lutherans and Episcopalians and Presbyterians who still hang up rainbow flags in their churches, you know, from that crowd to the academics in seminaries that have largely turned left, and a lot of the popular media pulpit ministers, Joel Osteen, I don't know, you know, all the Beth White, is that her name? Beth Moore, or you know, all of those folks that have huge platforms and have millions of people that follow them. You know, for them, I think there's probably a big mishmash of positions of where they fall on politically, but they tend to lean left when they get pressed because they don't want to seem controversial and they don't want to be held under any kind of scrutiny from the media. So I don't know. There's this danger. I think the biggest danger, to answer your question,
gee, Diane, that's pretty big that they stopped the feds on the highways of Texas. Wow, that's sort of getting down to the beginning of the Civil War, isn't it? That's pretty serious.
Gone a long way.
I don't blame Texas, but I'm just saying it's pretty serious.
Is to say that I think it's more or less the danger with Trump winning is that there is a normalcy bias that will kick back in for a large segment of society, and they're not going to see the danger of where we are, how close we are to the end of things.
Well, that's a great point. I had one thing on my mind that's going a little bit different direction, but that's that if we're not operating under the assumption that, well, let me put it this way. I agree with Brother J.B. Hickson that we probably don't really have truly fair elections anymore. And I wouldn't say that doesn't mean we shouldn't vote, shouldn't have political exercise or anything, but just something to deal with, something to be aware of. And that no matter who comes into office, I think it's a reasonable understanding that they're there because the deep state and the global cabal want them there. It's gonna suit their purposes. They like going back and forth between the conservatives and the leftists, and they like to foment that dissension. They like to foment that controversy. They like to foment division. That's just how Marxism works, and that's how the Hegelian dialectic works. So that's what looking at is it doesn't even matter whether Trump truly is part of the New World Order crew.
With all the volcanoes in Hawaii, you wouldn't think Zuckerberg would be building sanctuary cities in them, would you?
Or if he's truly opposed to it. That's an entirely different issue than whether the New World Order people have their hooks and claws in the entire American political system.
And you know, I definitely think the Hegelian dialectic is something that they're using as probably the overarching strategy for moving the global civilization in the direction they want them to go. I also think there are things like accelerationism, where you ask the question like, why is BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street and these massive investment firms, why are they pushing DEI, SDG, all the other things on companies, and these companies are losing billions and billions of dollars? And I've asked this question, like, why are they doing this? Like, it doesn't make any sense that they would push these things that are so antithetical to the common, the population, where these companies now are bleeding money, like Disney, Bud Light, and all these other companies are bleeding money. And when you understand what accelerationism is, they are trying to collapse the system faster, in the same vein that when you're trying to pull off a Band-Aid and it hurts, you don't just inch it off, you just rip it off all at once, because they figure they have a better chance of landing where they want to go in securing their power structure on the other side of this divide, than if they just kind of do it nice and slow. So I guess it could be either way.
Not true. I read the title and then I speed read the rest. Hi Trace, good to see ya.
I mean, it could be that they want the division to continue, but I tend to think because they're setting these dates like 2030, Great Reset.
Yep.
We have to have this stuff done by 20. Like they seem to be hyper focused on 2030 for some reason, but it's either that. And I think the Hegelian dialectic has been the way it's been for the last 100 years, where they govern by crisis.
Yep.
But at the same time, I think they're getting now to this end state where
the smoke gives me X-ray vision, so I can see through the smoke with the X-ray vision.
The world order that we exist in presently, with the United States on top as the kind of the lone superpower, now that is crumbling and it's starting to fall apart. So now we're in this transition phase between that world order and this world order that they're trying to establish. So I think in a way they're trying to accelerate everything and speed things up. And if you think about COVID, right? I mean, COVID, an article I read years ago, it had sped up the digitalization of our economy, of the global economy, by like 6 years.
Wow.
So, if you think about where we were in terms of technology.
Wow, he just said the COVID years sped up technology like 6 years in advance. That's interesting.
The workplace and all that. Back in 2020, we are now at a place that we shouldn't even get to. Had COVID never happened, we wouldn't even get to that place until like 2026 in terms of how being able to work from home, all the different platforms and bandwidth now has been upgraded so that it can accommodate, Zoom meetings and
Shawnee, does Paul Beckley do a cover of that?
And doing all of the bulk of your purchasing and doing whatever you're going to do online. All that stuff has been sped up and tremendously in by the tune of 6 years. So, it seems to me that they're pushing, now that they have a goal in mind, like 2030, it seems like they're racing toward this point, and they're just going to, bull in the China shop, kind of just blow everything over, or, the Kool-Aid man busting through the wall. They're just going to just keep plowing through until they achieve whatever there's this end state, which I think, like a central bank digital currency, once they get that in place, they've got us. They've got everybody by the short and curlies, because
wow,
if the government can control everything that you buy or sell, or they can see everything that you buy and sell, they can do exactly what they did in Canada, where they can begin to cut people off financially. They can begin to deplatform you. I mean, once you take away people's livelihoods, then you're getting into serious territory. When you can't provide for your...
Look what Canada done to the truck protests. threatening to attack their bank accounts. So this is really, really about super control.
Family, you can't buy groceries, gas, whatever. And that's the scary part. You know, we read like Revelation 13 and we read the mark of the beast and we read all that, but we don't really, it doesn't really sink in how serious that is going to be and how much pressure it's going to be on that population then inside of the tribulation when starvation starts to kick in. And I venture to say most Americans have never truly experienced starvation. I haven't. But I mean, when you get hungry, I mean, that's a whole new level of desperation. When you haven't eaten in days and days and days, and you don't know when your next meal is going to come, and you start getting very desperate. You can read through historical accounts, the Donner Party, the people in the Jerusalem siege in 70 AD. I mean, on and on and on. I mean, you could read accounts of what lengths they'll go to stay alive. So I think that central bank digital currency is part and parcel. That is probably the point of no return at that point. So again, these guys are pushing everything forward. They're using crisis to introduce increasingly draconian legislation and things like that. But God is still controlling the overall flow.
Well, Diane, that's a pretty lavish bunker, isn't it?
Of how fast things are going to go.
Now, some people see America's demise in the.
And I wonder why he built it in Hawaii. Does he know something about Hawaii's going to be safe? Because you'd think it's the other way around with its volcanoes. So what does he know about Hawaii that he's building it there?
Near future, and others see America as a significant part of the reconstituted Roman Empire. What are your thoughts on the subject?
You know, so I think after the rapture, the U.S. will collapse. I think there will be a chaos for a period of time. I tend to think about a year. You know, it's going to take about a year for the governments, the beast kingdom that rises after that, to kind of get their hands around everything in terms of policing up the lawless populations, policing up the criminal elements that are out there, the gangs, cartels, militias, so on and so forth. But, you know, obviously the United States is not going to disappear from the map. I mean, the country's still going to be here. A lot of the infrastructure is still going to be here. I think that the United States is incorporated into this final 10 king system.
Well, Barry, wow, that's pretty serious. Ukraine's getting desperate now.
But I think Brandon Holthouse was the first guy that I heard that mentioned this, is in terms of the phrasing of it. It's going to be like regional imperialism. So the world's broken up into 10 regions, but it's under an imperial system, which ultimately will be co-opted into one kingdom with one guy controlling everything, that being the Antichrist. So the United States will still be part of this system, but we will not be the United States anymore. We might, I don't know what we'll be called, but we won't be that. We won't have the Constitution. None of that stuff's going to exist anymore. So we'll be part of the beast kingdom, but we are not going to be anything like we are today.
Well, coming back more particularly to things that we are likely to see this year, or probably going to see this year, my mind turned to America getting involved in the Middle East yesterday, bombing some Houthi positions. What do you see in the next year? What's the potential for this conflict in the Middle East to keep expanding? Or what's the potential for it to contract and just kind of build pressure until after the rapture? I mean, we got potential scenarios here. What do you think?
Well, I mean, if you take this to the
Diane, I can speed read a bit. I can read pretty quick and gauge what it's all about in a few read, like a quick look over. I can do that.
Very, very top, or at the very bottom, I guess you should say. And what is causing all the instability in the Middle East? It's Satan, right, and his fallen angels who are trying to upend Bible prophecy. They're trying to prevent it. happening. They tried with the Nazis. They tried to exterminate the Jews so that they couldn't, go forward as a people. Obviously, that backfired. And then out of that came the UN resolution in 47 in November, and then the nation state of Israel. So Israel being back in the land isn't the issue. And the Jews and the Arabs for hundreds of years have got along. I'm not saying it was perfect, but I'm just saying that they know that they can get along and live next to each other. They've done it before. So something is driving the pressure and the tension and the anger and the hostility, not just in the Middle East, but around the world. So before Israel became a nation again in 48, you had anti-Zionism.
And that says page won't load.
Or you had anti-Semitism in the form of that culminated, I guess, with the final solution in the Nazi-controlled European Europe. But even before that, Jews were
me too, Trace. It says page not found,
starting to leave. They were getting nervous in Europe in the 1890s, saying, we got to get back to our homeland. Things are not going in the right direction here for us as a people. And that culminated with the Nazis, right? The Third Reich. After World War II, anti-Semitism became very verboten. It became the same. You don't want to ever be accused of that. So then it turned into anti-Zionism, which was a kind of politically correct way of saying that I don't hate the Jews. I just don't think they should be back over there in the Middle East. Like, that's not their land, or whatever. And so now with October 7th, I think that what's been exposed is now both of these have come back forward in full bloom in places that are surprising everybody, especially people on the left that are Jewish liberals or Jewish Democrats and stuff. So I think that
we just throw it away now.
Understanding the spiritual component to this is key in trying to decipher the geopolitical component of it. Satan is trying to prevent Israel from progressing any further. I think he's using the hostility of their neighbors, of the Islam and all that, to prevent them from building their third temple. But out of all this, this hostility, out of the wars, out of what happened on October 7th, what's going to come out of it is going to be just like World War II, or like the final solution. Satan tried to use.
Yeah, I bet they took that down because that guy got assassinated for saying something about Biden and Zelensky. I bet they took it down.
This for his ends and destroy the Jewish people, and then out of that came the nation of Israel. Here he stirs up the Muslim neighbors to the point of a frenzy that they have to go in and this murderous warpath to kill as many Jews as they can. And then out of that came this solidarity of the Jewish people from all different political persuasions, from different religious perspectives, whether they're liberal, orthodox, ultra-orthodox, or atheist or whatever. Now they're unifying as a people again. And then out of that, I think, is going to come the demand for the third temple. And I think with things like the red heifers that have been in the news as of late, with the fact that now Hamas and other groups are now throwing missiles around, willy-nilly, I can't help but think that one of those missiles is going to just accidentally kind of get moved in a direction to where it aims directly at the Al-Aqsa Mosque or the Dome of the Rock, destroys those, and then boom, there's available real estate, for them to build this temple. So,
but it would also be a tremendous firestorm, because even if it was a stray Hezbollah missile or a stray missile from one of the other fundamentalist organizations in Islam, they would blame Israel for it.
Oh yeah. But I mean, you look too about Saudi Arabia, is now downplaying the significance of the Temple Mount. That the temple, or the Temple Mount, Jerusalem's never mentioned in the Quran.
Right.
And so I think the Saudis are. I think at the end of all this, they'll be part of the Abraham Accord, and they'll downplay the significance of the Temple Mount, or they'll continue to downplay it. So I think even by the end of Gog Magog, there's not going to be any political things stopping the Jews from rebuilding their third temple. I think at least at the end of Gog Magog, that's going to be the neutering of Islam, or militant Islam, rather.
So we were talking a little bit earlier about things that might come up that would either get in the way of the election or stop the election or interfere with the election. You know, off the top of my head, I can think of like another pandemic. I can think of just rioting in major cities over some kind of decision or political position taken on one side or the other prior to the election. I could even think of people just getting all worked up over the situation in the Middle East. What kind of things do you see might arise that could get in the way?
Well, I mean, just, you know,
And guys, this is only 1 day old, so it's as fresh as you can get.
you know, as recently as a day or two ago, the U.S. and the British did a joint military strike on the Houthi positions in Yemen. If Iran so chooses, and they may be holding out and waiting for a strategic time to do this, but between them and the Chinese and what they call OTMs, other than Mexicans that are coming across the southern border, I mean, there's any number of potential sleeper cells in the United States already that could be activated to carry out some you know, attacks in various ways. So I can see that playing out, especially if, you know, let's just say at the end of the primaries, Trump is the clear nominee and he is going to be the Republican nominee going forward. You know, those guys could be activated at that point to kind of, you know, do the same repeat of the summer of 2020, but instead of George Floyd and Derek, you know, Chauvin scenario, now they've got these sleeper cells that are kicking off all over the place, and it's creating all kind of panic. And you know, it could be very reminiscent of what the Obama's put together in that leave the world behind scenario, where you have all sort of things happening and you don't know who's doing what, and that's going to create panic across the population. That'll give the government control of the communications. They'll be able to clamp down on a whole lot of different things. So that could be what happens going forward. And if you subscribe to the idea of the revelation of the method, which is a tactic that these guys like to use, whether you want to use predictive programming or symbolism or propaganda or things like this leave the world behind thing, they kind of tell you, hey, this is what's going to happen ahead of time. So that to me seems like a likely possibility. And you're right, it could be another pandemic. It could be some type of economic collapse. You know, some country somewhere collapses, goes into bankruptcy, file, you know, whatever, overnight. They're, you know, like a 1920s Weimar Republic scenario where their currency just drops to zero. And then that has like a chain reaction to everywhere else. That can...
Shawnee, he's exactly right on all them claims. Ukraine was run by Nazis. Zelensky's gay and he's a drug addict. That's so true.
You know, you think back to 2010 and when Greece collapsed economically, I think it was 2010. Greece is a tiny economy, but still there were ramifications from that. People that had money invested there, or people, you know, money that they had borrowed, the Greeks had borrowed from EU and other places. So it could be a small thing that kind of snowballs into something else that triggers something, and we never saw it coming. It could be a combination of those things. It could be the Yellowstone caldera. I mean, who knows? But I'm hoping it's the rapture. You know, I'm hoping it's the rapture that is the ultimate crisis.
Well, it is interesting. I've thought about the fact that we had a lot of Antifas.
Diane, does Oklahoma usually get earthquakes? Is it known for earthquakes? Like we know California is, but is Oklahoma known for earthquakes?
Situations back surrounding the last election, you know, give it a year on either side. Now we move into the future. If we have these sleeper cells from Hamas, from Hezbollah and other organizations start doing their terror thing, that will make Antifa look like child's play.
Yeah. And, you know, I can see, just like we saw, you know, in the last few months, these massive rallies around the world that are anti-Israel, which, you know, in a way you could say pro-Hamas. Even after all of the barbaric things Hamas has done and live streamed and like put on video and, you know, I mean, it's undeniable the things that they're doing. and you still got, tens of millions of people out there chanting for them over Israel. I think that groups like Antifa and all these others will absolutely be co-opted into these events, at least be aides, accomplices in aiding and hiding and whatever these other groups. So, Antifa and I'm sure there's probably a dozen other organizations, but they generally are anarchists that lean into progressive ideology. So anarchists will help basically whoever they want to help that helps destroy the system overall. So,
well, we're looking at a lot of these subjects that are part of the growing acceleration of prophetic convergence. But that brings up another question, which is the rapture. And to me, just as a general theory, the deeper we go into prophetic convergence, the more likely we are to see the rapture in the near future. What are your thoughts on the subject?
Yeah, I used to believe that there would be a big gap between the rapture and the official start of the tribulation, or the 70th week. And as, like you said, the further we move into this, I think the shorter that gap is becoming. I do still believe I hold to a gap, because I think that there are things that have to happen between those two events.
Right.
Gog Magog conflict, and maybe the construction of the third temple, or the rebuilding or the building of a city of Babylon, or whatever. I just think that there's.
And Shawnee, that's who everyone's given billions of dollars of money and weapons to. That Zelensky and drag. Oh man, it's beyond words, isn't it? It's so bad, it's beyond words. And Biden sending them billions of dollars.
Things that inside of there that require time.
Oh man.
Even if those things don't happen, with the United States collapsing, it is going to have this domino effect around the world, collapsing other economies. That's going to trigger chaos, anarchy, lawlessness, and so forth. The criminal elements will rise up, try and take control, take advantage of the situations. So I think that requires time to get a handle on those, and to control those things, and to get those put back into some sort of a bottle, so to speak. So that gap that was, as much as 10 years that I held to in the past is now down to about a year, because there isn't that much further things that need to happen. We're already starting to see the things lining up for the tribulation, which means that our deliverance is all the sooner. We just don't know exactly when, and we don't know how long that time frame is between those two milestones in God's prophetic calendar.
I agree myself that there's going to be a gap, but it's probably going to be a year or less. Could only be just a month or a couple months. We don't need a whole lot of time for some of these scenarios to explode on the world, like the Gog and Magog situation, Psalm 83, for that fire that's going to fall on Magog and on those that dwell carelessly in the isles. And of course, the raptured church is gone. There's chaos and confusion, and all that mess. The world just in a panic-stricken rush of action, kind of just gets together on the one world religion and gets together.
Yeah, Diane, but does Oklahoma, has it got a history of earthquakes, or is this unusual?
A one world politics, and they make a bunch of compromises, and they usher in, well, the Antichrist.
Yeah. There, again, it's part and parcel of the Hegelian dialectic that, and I feel bad for Hegel, because, he didn't create the Hegelian dialectic for this intent, but it's been hijacked by others, Marx and Engels and other socialists and communists that have taken his construct and basically used it for nefarious purposes.
Oh, cool, Diane.
In studying those contradictions that Hegel was very much into, if you think about things today, for instance, like the open border, right? This is something the government could easily fix. The government can easily close the border down and could easily curtail the coyotes and all the other human smugglers and human traffickers, as well as the cartels, but we don't. And so you have to ask yourself, why are they not doing it? So it goes into the motivation of, okay, what goals does this serve those people that are in power? And so when, if you look at, if you're somebody that's a transnationalist or a globalist who doesn't believe in national sovereignty, they want to go towards a one world system, then borders are irrelevant. And so since the 1970s, 80s, they begin to weaponize immigration, to use it to destabilize places, to remove the national native-born peoples that are loyal to that old system or that country. With people,
look what happened to Europe in 2016 when the millions of Muslim refugees flooded Germany and Belgium and France. Cultural jihad.
Well, that aren't loyal to that system. And I'm not saying that illegals are evil in and of themselves. I'm not saying that. I'm saying they're being used by other people for purposes to they're coming here for a better life. A lot of them, the people that are allowing them to come and the people that are encouraging them to come are using them for another purpose, which is to supplant the local populations that are native born and lived here their whole life, and they believe in a constitution, et cetera, to people that have no loyalty to those things. So they're easily swayable to whatever, as long as you feed them, and give them a place to put their head every night, and not get shot at or attacked or whatever. So for them, it's an improvement, a life improvement. But for everybody else in that community, you basically are going to destroy the system by overwhelming it, which is this, the Cloward and Piven strategy of overwhelming systems that Glenn Beck used to talk about years ago. And so that's the intent. The intent is to overwhelm the systems, to supplant the native population, it ultimately to get us away from the Constitution, which gives the government, that's that huge roadblock for globalism, is the United States' Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and all of those things that create a division of powers or separation of powers for our government, the way our government functions. And so since our government is the superpower in the world, or at least, we're creating reality right now. Karl Rove once said, for those who don't know who Karl Rove is, he was the political strategist for George W. Bush. He said that empires create reality. And if you go back to the Roman times or the Persians or whoever, if you live in the boundaries of that empire, they create the reality. They create the money that you use, how you buy, where you serve, who you have to pay taxes to, whatever the dominant religion's going to be. They establish that. And so right now we're under this American empire in the world, and everybody's going around our orbit. And so that is where we're quickly coming to the end of that reality is starting to crumble, and we're in this transition period right now.
Mm-hmm.
And something else is rising up and taking our place, and there's people that are trying to fight that, and that would be like your pro-Trump MAGA crowd kind of folks. And you've got other people that are trying to accelerate it, which are your dyed-in-the-wool globalists like the Rockefellers and the Council of Foreign Relations dudes.
Shawnee, Diane posted a link yesterday where the refugees are taking over schools to sleep in schools. So yeah, they're already in New York now.
To the World Economic Forum, and then you've got everybody.
See, don't forget all your links, just some of them.
Else kind of in the middle, sandwiched in between these guys, trying to figure out which way is up. And so that's where that's why I think there's so much cognitive dissonance right now between the world that we see around us and the world that's being fed to us by the government, by the deep state, the media, etc.
Well, it's interesting you brought up cognitive dissonance. I was thinking of from a little bit different angle, but the very same thought. It just seems like the people that are far left, they're so convinced of that position, they're just dumbfounded how anyone can be so stupid to be a conservative that's swinging to the right. And of course, on the right, we think similar ways. It's like, how can anyone be so stupid to be on the left? There's both sides are frustrated with cognitive dissonance.
And you think about the messaging from the government and from the media for the last 3 years, you've had expert after media pundit after, spokesman and CEO and all this saying, trust the science. You need to be double masked. You need to get 4 shots. You need to get this, that, and the other for something that has a very high survivability rate to it. And at the same time that they're preaching to you that you have to trust the science, they're saying, well, men can be women and women can be men and gender's fluid. And if a child that's 11 wants to change, and we should give them the life-changing surgery that will completely screw them up for the rest of their life. I mean, like, they have, on one hand, they're telling you to trust the science with the climate and with the shots and all that. On the other hand, they're completely defying science by ignoring reality. And both of these messages are being bombarded on us in the movies and music and the news and by corporations. I mean, it is no wonder people that we're probably the most medicated society on the planet. Not just us, but Western civilization right now is probably the most medicated it's ever been, because of all the craziness that's being pushed down our throats.
What's interesting is
I'll tell you what, these guys have been going for how long now? 45 minutes, and they're covering everything. I'm really enjoying this.
to talk a little bit about spiritual warfare, and you just kind of gave us a great place here to segue into that. You're talking about all these people being bullied into submission, and that they'll throw at you a big argument like trust the science, even though there's no science in it. It's a rejection of science. Or they'll bully you with moral positions and hammer you with, that's a lack of love if you're going to follow the scriptures on this issue. Well, people, what's interesting about this, error wins the day. Whether big error, small error, political error, doctrinal error wins the day by ad hominem arguments, by bludgeoning people, by bullying people. They can't win the little debate or the big debate by just simply getting in the arena of objective arguments and lay out the facts and let the people be the jury. They are absolutely terrified of people thinking for themselves. And that's where we're at as a society. That's where we're at as a culture.
I mean, you have a Supreme Court justice nominee who couldn't even define what a woman is. That tells you the state of, I mean, we left objective land a long time ago. We are way deep into subjective territory, probably lost in the woods in the subjective woods of subjective world. I mean, it is whatever you think is true is your truth, and we've had that crammed down our throats now for decades, and now we're reaping the consequences of all of these. Frankly, I think it's the Frankfurt School of ideology or whatever that's been pushing this stuff since the 1920s. But all of this progressive ideology has led us to this state of just mass confusion. And not so much us and the older generation, but for the younger folks, man, I can't even imagine what it's like to be a teen now, to live in this day and age where so much of this mixed messaging is just pushed by everywhere. And, it used to be, you would, my daughter is almost 18. I was hoping, well, let's say, let's get some money put away. Let's get your grades up. Let's get you a scholarship so you can go to college. Now I'm actively talking to her out of going to college. Like, you don't want to go there. It's the little commie factories. You need to get a skill. And at the same time, the tried and true ways of life that we grew up under, like putting money away, having a nest egg, investing in this, investing in that, and things that our parents benefited from doing. We can't even tell them that now because, being 33 trillion in debt with the CBDCs on the horizon, I mean, who knows how much longer this whole system, this house of cards that we're under, is going to stay standing. I mean, it's not
going to stay standing long now. BRICS is out, and they're actually doing trades without the American dollar. $23 trillion. You can't pay that back.
waiting for a little gust of wind to blow it all over, and
Yeah.
and it's going to all come crumbling down.
You know, you've mentioned a few times in programs past, and you mentioned it today about the chaos that's going to be caused by the rapture. And you know what? You might be right. I mean, I believe that the rapture is going to create a lot of chaos. But it could be the one situation where the powers that be, it catches them by surprise just as much as it catches the church and the world in general by surprise. But they're going to be ready to capitalize on it and exploit that situation and inaugurate some emergency situations that they've been preparing for. They don't have their scenario yet, but when it comes up, they're going to jump on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the whole mindset of the left, the political left, not just Americans, but any left group from anywhere is to never let a crisis go to waste. It's a tried and true, surefire way for them to grab power, ultimately. So now, do I think Klaus Schwab and George Soros and those guys believe in a rapture? No, none of those guys do. The Democratic think tanks and all the people that feed the NSA and the International or the National Intelligence Council and all of these different groups, when they get fed scenarios about what they predict the future to look like, none of them ever include the rapture of the church, because to them that's just, it might as well be aliens showing up and doing some type of mass abduction. That's really about what they think it's going to equal to. So they don't take that scenario seriously. However, we know that our enemy Satan does. And so even though they may not understand what's going to happen, he does, and he is behind the scenes, behind them, maneuvering in ways that when the crisis does come, they're going to be able to capitalize it, just like you said. So it will be chaos, it will be lawlessness, but I do think you're right. I do think they're going to be able to pretty quickly get a handle on it. And the only counter I would say to that is that if you look at throughout history, anytime a nation, empire, whatever, has come to think of themselves as the kingdom of God, the Byzantines got to this point, right? And what happened? Well, Islam rose up and then completely upended that, that thought. The British came to think of this, that they are the kingdom. And even in King Charles and in the royal, when they're getting crowned and stuff, they do all this like Hebrew stuff, rituals and things like that, because they, at some level, they think they are the true Israel. And that's, where British Israelism comes from. And what happened? Well, the colonies broke away, the American colonies, and we became this big thorn in their side. And now we're at our time where, the Nazis thought they were going to create a 1,000-year Reich, right? And they went off, and they planned on, they were doing their science, they were building their science centering around not just the science but the occult to achieve 1,000-year soldiers. They wanted so.
Diane, I went to the shops yesterday and there's this drag queen. It was about 6'2". It was really wide shouldered. And I thought, gee, that's a strange looking chick. And I had a look if it had breasts or not. And then I realized it's a guy. So this guy is built like a brick shithouse. Is putting makeup on and things like that. It's absolutely, they look like pigs with lipstick on.
That could live for 1,000 years because they had a kingdom that was going to be 1,000 years. They built they constructed everything with this idea of ruin value. Ruin value is like when you go back and if you go to Greece or Rome or whatever, and you look at these fantastic buildings that are still standing after thousands of years, they wanted their architecture to have that same level of beauty and detail, that even after 1,000 years, they'd still be beautiful. And so that was their mindset. But what happened? God raised up the Americans to come in and be that final push that completely destroyed the Third Reich, as well as the Soviets coming from the other direction. And now we're at our time. We've for some reason come to think of ourselves as the chosen people, and basically we look at everything from an American perspective. And so I think something's going to upend us. But I think that's going to be the rapture. So God will use antagonists to delay or to thwart or to whatever his plan. So I think in this gap time, what will happen? I even wrote a book based on this, a fiction book with my friend Toby, Apocalypse 1%ers. I think that the criminal elements who already exist outside of the system, they don't operate under our normal system. That this is gonna benefit them the greatest. So you'll have the cartels, you'll have the biker gangs, you'll have all the other criminal gangs, MS-13. They're gonna have a heyday with the chaos that comes at the other side of the aftermath of the rapture. So it's going to take that government to control them or co-opt them into to whatever this new system is going to be, and that may take a little bit of time, so a few months or whatever.
What's interesting to me is, one of the arguments for introducing the digital currency system and for going the direction of digital passports, not just the health passports, but digital passports that are like international identification system.
Face it, Barry, they look like pigs with lipstick. That's what they look like. Pigs with lipstick and mascara. That's what they look like.
Going in this,
and they don't even realize it.
Direction. Their argument is, but we're going to stop crime. We're going to protect all of you. But there's no way under the sun that this is going to stop crime. And the reason for it is, there's too much money in crime. And all these criminals have to do is just slip $1 million under the table and they're going to get their digital passports. I mean, what in the world?
He probably read your face, Diane, and wasn't game to ask you.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately you have a bunch of competing interests right now from, I think where we're at now is we have this technological oligarchy or technocratic oligarchy, almost on par with most nation states today. When you think about how powerful Google and BlackRock and all these groups are, you have their interest, where their interest is to control all of it. They want all of the economy. They want to control everything, and they're being driven by dark, nefarious forces. You have the political elements. Let's say Democrats and establishment Republicans, people that live in the Beltway, lived there the whole life, don't want to move. They're very tied in with everything. They want to keep their seat at the table. You've got obviously criminal elements all over the world who want to maintain their little fiefdoms. You've got everybody's got some vested interest in their own well-being.
Yeah.
And these groups just take it to the next level. They'll do whatever they have to do to stay in power. So
it is sad, isn't it, Diane? And I wonder if they front God dressed in their training outfit. I'm serious. I wonder if they imagine fronting God with all that equipment on you. How ashamed would you be?
It's going to be the Antichrist who is going to be able to wrangle after he deposes 3, however he does that. He wrangles everybody else in. And I think that's with being aided by the false prophet who's able to do these supernatural signs and wonders. And he's going to have.
Shawnee, you'd think he'd be used to getting jabbed. Bit rude, sorry.
All of hell behind him, backing him. So I think he is going to be the one that's, think about it this way. There's only one true faith in the world, right? Is faith in Jesus Christ, faith in the God of the Bible. That's it. Everything else, every other religion, I don't care how militant or benign it acts, it is all part and parcel of Satan's schemes and deceptions, right? It's all based on those things. And Satan, for the last 2,000-3,000 years, has been able to manipulate those, whatever benefits him. So he, for the last, 50, 60 years, 70 years, has been able to manipulate Islam to such an extent that it is
extremely dangerous,
antagonistic towards the West. It's antagonistic towards Jesus and to Christians and to Jews. It could have easily been the Hindus or the Buddhists, or Roman Catholics, or any number of other groups. And he has in the past, with the Roman Catholics, he did with the Inquisitions. So my point is that he controls all those evils, and he uses them and pits them against each other right now as he sees fit to further his agenda and to thwart God's plan as best he can. But after the rapture, he's going to bring all of these groups in together because they all belong to him anyways. So for him to to get these guys all working together, I don't think will take that much, you know.
You know, I got a few things I'd like to touch on that were going to bring us back a little bit more towards things that we might see this year. One of the ones you mentioned it earlier, the red heifers. Now, there's been talk about the red heifers, one of them actually being sacrificed, burnt, the ashes gathered. They, there's talk about a particular date being set. What do you think about this situation? Are we actually going to see, or at least could we actually see the red heifer burnt this year and the ashes gathered?
Absolutely. And I think all of this political instability that Israel's experienced over the past few years has been in an attempt by Satan and the demonic forces to prevent Israel from doing this exact thing, because this is the kind of the last, well, second to the last roadblock, if you will, for them to move forward on a temple. And so, Satan is trying to prevent this temple from being built because he knows once it's built that he's going to have, he's starting to count the minutes in the second hands instead of the hours, because he realizes how much little time he has left. So he's been trying to delay that through political instability within Israel, from within all the different political factions. He's been doing it with all of Israel's enemies, and the international pressure on Israel. But these red heifers, I think four are still viable candidates. So if they go till, personally, I think they probably already sacrificed one, to be honest, in secret, just to have it, just in case. Being how, they're very prudent and very savvy people. But I think they may do the public one on Passover for, symbolic purposes. And I think that's really what all this was about. And I think the conflict in Gaza is going to continue probably up to or through Passover. And so once these red heifers are done and they're able to be sacrificed and their ashes burnt, and even the ashes are mixed in with the dye that's mixed, that makes the temple veil that separates the Holy of Holies, that big veil that was torn when Christ died on the cross. That temple veil has the ashes mixed in with the dye. So, I mean, it's very integral to the creation of the temple. So once they get this done, I think all that's left is for them to.
Diane, she's only 16. She wouldn't know what she wants. That's such a shame. They come after the young, don't they?
And clear out some real estate on top of the Temple Mount, on top. So I think that may solve itself here, given the current situation. So, but I think that'll happen this year. And I absolutely think that this is going to be the most messianic year in terms, from Israel's perspective, that we've ever seen.
What's interesting to me is there's a lot of signs in the world that are geopolitical, that are economic, that are.
I believe in generational curses, but my family hasn't been into witchcraft. My grandfather was a Mason, but I don't think he was a 33rd degree.
Technological that are part of the prophetic convergence. But the red heifer is one of the ones that actually gets my heart racing the fastest and the strongest, with thoughts of anticipation of the rapture. Of course, we know it's not immediately tied to it, but it does seem that this is one of the big things that's talking about rebuilding the temple. It's talking about the things we see in the tribulation, and all this implies the nearness of the rapture.
Yeah, and I've always been of the mindset that I wholeheartely support the idea that no man knows the day or the hour.
Yeah.
I absolutely believe that through and through. But I also see.
Okay, if it's pre-trib and all the Christians are taken and raptured in pre-trib, who's left to share the gospel with the unsaved? Because there's some that actually help turn people Christian in the tribulation. Where did they come from if all the Christians were raptured out already?
Scripture that Paul alludes to it, and Jesus alludes to this. Paul in 1 Thessalonians 5, where he says, I have no need of brethren to tell you the day of the Lord comes like a thief in the night, and so he's starting to give some like indicators of that this should be obvious to us. Whoever wrote Hebrews, which I personally believe was Paul, in 10:25 says that as you see the day approaching, what's our conduct to be as believers, exhorting each other to good works and getting together and fellowshipping together, so much more as we see that day approaching. Well, we're not going to know the exact day, but we can see it on the horizon because of the things within the tribulation are now starting to manifest inside of our peripheral vision. It's starting now to become central in our world. Think about your peripheral vision. You can't really see that well out of the corners of your eye.
Yeah.
But the further we move forward in this convergence, the more into focus things like the central bank digital currency, the digital IDs, the push for a global, religious ecumenism. The House of Faith in Abu Dhabi or whatever.
Yep.
All of those things are kind of starting to come into focus, and these are all things that we see inside of the 70th week itself. I think we can see that time approaching. I think we can know the season.
Absolutely.
I'm a firm believer that we should know the season. And the tragedy is that most Christians don't know the season, don't even know how to recognize the season. And we see in Revelation 3:3 in Jesus, I don't say chastisement, I guess warning to the church at Sardis that if they don't watch, he's going to come upon them as a thief. So that is implied that if you are watching, you will not be surprised. And I think people in this audience, people online and within small communities around the world that are actively watching and waiting for the Lord to return, and that are looking at the events of our day, are getting excited, and they're starting to see movement in these particular areas. And so I get excited because I'm like, I always believed that the mid 2020s was like the time, right?
Yeah.
And I came to this position by Don Koenig, who used to write he used to have his own website, The Prophetic Years. And he projected back in the early 2000s, it was going to be the second coming would be sometime in the 2030s. In the way he looked at it, he took all of the prophecies, he took all of the theories, kind of did a table on it, balanced it out, did the math. And it seems to indicate like the mid 2030s would be the second coming. Well, if you back that up 7 years, you get into the mid to late 2020s.
Yeah.
So it was incredibly depressing and incredibly discouraging to come to that understanding in the early 2000s, like I did, and think that the 2020 seemed like forever away. It seemed like, a million years away. And I didn't like to think of that being that far off, but now that we're here, I'm like, okay, I get it. I mean, I see how things have come into view and how God is allowed to advance the world according to his timetable and not the world's. And so here we are, and I'm excited. I think every Christian that is watching and waiting for the Lord should be excited. And it should motivate us to be out there sharing the gospel, being out there in our community, sharing the gospel with our friends, talking about this. And because when this does happen, there's going to be a lot of people that will remember folks like us. They were like, that's that guy from YouTube that was going on about the rapture, and now the media is saying it's this, but he told us that they would say it was the aliens, and so they're going to be going through their own level of cognitive dissonance trying to figure out.
Yep.
And I think that's where the Holy Spirit comes in and says, no, that guy was right.
I saw something on YouTube about Taylor Swift casting spells when she does her performances. I didn't watch it because it wouldn't surprise me if she does, but apparently that's what she does.
So I think there's a rhyme and a reason to why we have a platform like YouTube or the internet, and we have this open door right now to talk about these things and to get together as a community and motivate each other to good works.
Amen. You know, you were talking about that rapture window, and I remember as a young man back in the early 90s, concluding a very similar window, looking at the 2024, 2025, 2026 era, based on a very similar set of things that Bill Koenig and you were looking at. And since that time, that's where I've been focused. But what's interesting about this is it's one thing to have that in your mind as a theory, and it's just not something you'd write for the right answer on a test. But once you get into that era and you realize, whoa, the stage is literally being set before our eyes. And we're not just looking at one or two things and making a big stretch here. I mean, we're looking at the geopolitical stage has been rearranged in the past few decades, so it harmonizes with the tribulation. We're looking at that we have the technology here right now to literally clamp down on the entire world. We have technology right now to whatever the mark of the beast type system is going to be. There's a half a dozen varieties that are super high tech that are going to be compatible with quantum computing, with AI, and they're going to manipulate mankind. We've got all this stuff going on. The anti-Semitism, the temple, and the amount of information, the amount of prophetic convergence and its diversity, its depth, its breadth, it's breathtaking. And brother, it's amazing to me that anyone that reads the Bible isn't on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I was thinking of, I think it's Matthew 24, when Jesus says,
See, that second one was interesting, Di, as I read a lot of it.
you see all of these things.
Yeah.
So he gives in the Olivet Discourse, he gives he's answering the questions to the disciples ask, and he starts listing off things, right? Deception, wars, rumors of war, and so forth. But then he gets down to the end. He says, when you see all of these things, know that I'm near, even at the door. And so, you know, I tend to think that this window of time that this last days began, you know, probably we could see it starting in 1914 with the First World War, because then that stripped the land away from the Ottoman Empire and began to move in that direction so that Israel could come back into the land. So there's all these things that began stage setting for Israel to come back in the land. There's all these things that have been stage setting for the beast kingdom to be established, not just technologically, but politically, through religion, economically, and so forth. So, I mean, we're kind of at the end. I don't want to say we're at the end of all this stage setting, but
Yeah, she ended up representing the goddess that got kicked out of their version of the Garden of Eden and come back for revenge. And yeah, so she's representing the goddess.
you're right. I mean, if it happened today, it wouldn't take long for the beast kingdom to stand up. I mean, so I wrote an article a while back called, The Tyranny of the Present. And I you know, I wasn't into prophecy in the early 90s. I was a teenager. I was thinking about girls and partying and all that stuff. That was really all that was on my mind. But I put myself back in that, my own shoes back then and said, what if I were into prophecy back then? What would I be looking at in 1993, you know, after I graduated high school? What would I be looking at then? I'd be looking at the Oslo Accords. I'd be looking at things like the year 2000. It's very symbolic year. The internet was a new thing at that time. And, you know, there were some things that I could point to that seemed to have significance, but nothing compared to today.
Yes,
I mean,
that's right.
I mean, it is night and day difference between then and now. So, you know, it's exciting. It's also, I'm also nervous, not nervous. I'm also, I want to do more, you know, like I want to do more than what I'm doing now. And I feel, you know, you got the constraints of family, job, you know, all the things that, you know, I would love to jet set around the world and plant churches. And I don't know if you know Mark Musser, but he's a good Christian brother from the Northeast, Washington, I think, academic type guy, but he goes over to like Eastern Europe and to Armenia and other places. and he does Bible studies with these little pockets of believers. And if I had $1 billion, that's what I would be doing. Like I would be going all over the world and teaching Bible studies on the last days, on the things to come. And that's really where I want to be. But I'm here, right? I have my family here. I've got a job. I've got bills and house. I'm paying the inside of my house. I mean, like, I got stuff here. I can't just leave all the time and do all the things I want to do. So I try to make the most of what I can with what I can. I think that's all of us. All of us should be of that same mindset. To whatever circle that you're in, you try and influence those people, family members, coworkers, friends, whoever, neighbors, and share with them the gospel, share with them the things that are coming on the world, and let the Holy Spirit lead in those conversations, in those moments.
Amen. One other thing I've been thinking about that's on the horizon that we could see this year is some of the passport system. They're implementing, the World Health Organization is going down the path of the first stage of their rollout of these passports is supposedly going to be this year. We don't know for sure which nations are going to embrace it right away and how far they're going to embrace it, but this stuff is coming this year. We're really looking at a situation where we could find ourselves, not just as Christians, but as cultures, restricted in our traveling.
Absolutely. I think, in October, even before, I guess maybe it was early October, Tom Hughes and those guys that were going to speak at the Proxy Watchers conference got stuck in Europe because of this stuff was going down in some of the exit points they were looking to leave Europe from. And so when they invited me to go to Australia, I was thinking, oh man, they're probably going to want me to do a shot and do all this other stuff. And so thankfully, I didn't have to do that. I just had my passport and get my visa stuff lined up. But I can see that very easily and very quickly, especially if another, pandemic type thing happens. And now the guy, what's his name? Bali, Boutros Bali, or whatever his name is, the WHO leader, the director of the WHO, the World Health Organization, was called to question about some of the very draconian wording that was in this legislation that was put forth for this digital ID. And he walked it back and said, no. And I think he only walked it back because he got caught, or they got caught trying to put that in there, that language in there that supersedes national sovereignty and in favor of some type of international WHO law.
Right.
That says, you can't travel, you can't do this without this. And so he walked that back, but I think we're just really one more medical crisis away from that really being thrown back in there and cemented for good. So think back to the Patriot Act back in think back to 1995. The Omnibus Homeland Terror Bill, I think it was 94, 95 was the first time it was Joe Biden and Ted or Tom Daschle was trying to push this through. And it was so draconian, it never went anywhere. And it couldn't even pass after the Oklahoma City bombing. It couldn't pass.
Yeah.
Well, then fast forward 7 years to 9/11, or 6 years to 9/11. And that bill was repackaged, tweaked. John Ashcroft took it and tweaked it, and they had that thing passed through both houses and signed by George W. Bush within 30 days of 9/11. So whatever this bill is that the WHO director has tried to put forth.
So you're saying I'm not getting raptured?
Yep.
It didn't pass this time. It didn't go through this time, but I guarantee this one more little crisis, and they'll get that thing pushed through. And next thing you know,
I've asked to stay back and fight the bastards anyway, to be honest.
Americans are not going to be able to just go wherever they want anymore.
Yeah.
And then certain governments or certain governors within certain states that look like a color blue are going to begin to try and implement restrictive travel from, let's just say I'm in Texas and I want to go to California. Well, they may have some type of policy that says, well, you can't come in if you're from Texas because you guys support right to life or whatever, they'll tie it to global warming.
You can come if you're an illegal alien, but if you're a legal resident of Texas, forget about it.
Yeah. So that I do see that. I see that beginning to solidify this year. I think they're working through all the widgets and getting all the wording right, and they may just put it on a shelf and break in case of kind of glass put in front of it, and they're going to just wait for the next crisis, and then boom, it'll be ready to go. They'll just hand it in to whoever's in charge. And it may be Trump, and Trump may sign it under the pretenses of he thinks he's doing something good.
Yeah, what was
Like George
interesting
W.
about that
Bush.
is, and you brought it up earlier, it was under the Bushes that some of the strongest legislation for clamping down on American freedom was under the watch of the Republicans, where those freedoms were greatly reduced. And we're
Diane, I'm not sure when the rapture is, but reading it on my own without any outside influence, I pick up that we don't get raptured till the brink of defeat at our Armageddon, and then Jesus comes back and rescues us. That's what the conclusion I come to on the rapture. But the other inputs can make you wonder, but just as my natural self, that's what I worked out.
the legal structure was introduced that on face value it's presented as a great opportunity to clamp down on fundamentalist extremism, and everyone's thinking Islamic extremism, but those same laws are now being pressed against anyone that's regarded as extreme, and nobody's more extreme than those that take the Bible literally.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be very careful with the wording, and when it remains pretty vague and open, you should just expect that it's going to be used against you at some point.
Yeah,
Whatever
that's right. Well, one other thing that I've been considering that is an issue here in the near future. To be honest, I expected Ukraine to fall the first year, and then I expected Ukraine to fall the second year. Neither time did I anticipate that the West was going to be so invested in preserving Ukraine. But now we're coming to a situation where little hints are coming out of the West that they're either going to have to bring their support of Ukraine down to a trickle, or they're going to make some significant cuts in it, military aid, financial aid, other kinds of aid. It almost looks like the West is preparing Ukraine and preparing the world in general to just accept the eventual folding of Ukraine. Well, what do you think about the situation?
Yeah, I think that this year is probably going to be the year things culminate in Ukraine, and it won't be for Ukraine's benefit. I mean, so aside from the last numbers I heard was about 500,000 Ukrainian men and probably women were killed fighting in this conflict thus far. I don't know how many Russians, but it's devastated their nation. Not only has it killed 500,000 of their young men, it's also driven. I think about how many Ukrainians have fled to other places. So it's a shadow of its former self. I think that should Trump win, or if it looks like he's going to win to be the presumptive nominee, I think that they may.
Exactly right. Who will wear the white robes? Exactly right, Shawnee. And Barry, the Ukraine's drafting women. They've been drafting 60-year-old men as well.
Look to.
They got no youth left. They lost something like 500,000 soldiers.
Ukrainians may sue for peace, and then
Speaking of the devil,
part of that negotiations would be that the Zelensky government has to step down, all of it, and then they'll be replaced by somebody that's either neutral or pro Russia, and in exchange for that, Russia will say, well, hey, we won't press any further into Ukraine. What we have now is what we have, and you guys, that'll just be that's your new borders, And I think the only other options in is that we continue further into this, and NATO gets dragged into it, and it creates this scenario where we're actually throwing bullets at each other, NATO versus Russia, which, when you think about it, that's what NATO was created for, right?
Yeah.
But that none of the EU doesn't have the appetite for that right now. They don't have the military strength without the United States to really do that. So they don't want that. So I think things are going to get buttoned up with Ukraine this year. And then really, if Putin stays in power, and then this may be the thing too. Putin,
Sean, you remember the Germans did? You remember they had them little kids and Adolf Hitler was meeting them and his hands were shaking and he was giving medals to like 13-year-old kids. So Germany didn't mind getting the kids in the war. Ukraine will as well.
may die, and Medvedev takes over, and he now begins to
Yeah.
demand that because he's lockstep with Putin in terms of ideology. He's very much on board with Putin's vision of a greater Eurasian empire with Russia at the helm. But at the same time, that may be an opportunity for them to bring this to a close. The Ukrainians, they allow the Ukrainians to sue for peace, and then Zelensky government's replaced. Zelensky goes to work for the World Economic Forum and his top guys, and then they just bring in some nobodies that basically are basically this becomes like a Switzerland in a way. So I think that ultimately happens, but I think it very much could happen this year. The scary thing then would be China making its move on Taiwan to force this reunification. So in China, Taiwan is the world's #1 computer chip manufacturer, or there's something they do with computer chips that they're the only ones. They have all the clean
semiconductors.
Yeah.
They're huge
semiconductors.
Yeah.
So should China retake Taiwan, China would have the overwhelming vast control over the entire global market for this, and that would give them incredible power. So it's in the United States' vested interest to protect Taiwan, but nobody really has the appetite for that either. We don't want to go toward the Chinese over Taiwan, over in their part of the land or in their part of the world. Which is why, if you listen to like Britt Gillette and some others, when we don't have the manpower anymore to do that.
Diane, there's a big difference with your system and our system. Your system gets men convicted for pedophilia and you lock them up for 20, 25 years. Yeah, we catch people for pedophilia and they're lucky to do 3 or 4 years. I wish we followed you guys, because if they do that to a kid, they should never be on the streets again. They just don't think right.
We can't even meet our recruiting quotas for the military because of how woke the military
And I mention that because of them 7 men die.
has become and how disastrous their policies have been over the last few years. And this is why the DARPA and these folks are pressing really hard into swarm technology. And the swarm technology would give us the edge against a nation like China, where we don't have to send thousands of young men to die. We can start sending this technology that begins to take out Chinese. And that seems like a high possibility to me, because we don't really see China in prophecy. We don't really see them again until towards the end, when these 3 demonic frog-like creatures go forth and bring all the kings together, and then you have the kings of the east that march against the Antichrist, or at least march in that direction over the Euphrates.
Yeah.
So it seems like they are not in the equation necessarily up until at least to the midpoint or after the midpoint. So something happens to them between now and then that kind of derails them. So they could have some kind of economic collapse, and or they try to take Taiwan. We counter with high technology and defeat them and protect Taiwan at great cost to Chinese, or to the Chinese, or the CCP.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm spitballing here at this point. We don't really know how this plays out. We just know that they aren't in the prophetic picture until the very end, when the kings of the east march west. So something happens to them between now and then.
Diane, the biggest shock I ever had about child sex? I didn't know that people had sex with babies. That really shocked me. I didn't know that was a thing. And it wasn't until I turned Christian and got into the rituals and things like that I learned about that. I did not realize people raped babies. I didn't think that would be a thing.
Well, one more piece that I've been thinking about is Israel's present struggles in Gaza and with Hezbollah on the Lebanese border. What might we see develop out of this over the next year?
Wow, 9 months.
At the beginning of all of this, what were Israel's criteria, they were going to remove Hamas as anything, as a political entity and as a military threat. They were going to remove the threat from Gaza. But then that expanded to Hezbollah in the north because it wasn't sustainable to keep their northern communities on the border with Hezbollah when Hezbollah is throwing missiles at them all the time.
Yeah.
Diane, they must have demons in them to do that. Who even goes there? They must have dead set demons in them to do that to children.
And they could very well do the same thing that Hamas did, cross the border and have this. So there wasn't any appetite to keep them there. There are people there in the north. So you've got a ton of Israelis, thousands of Israelis that are displaced right now that aren't living in their homes because of the threats on their borders. So I would say that unless Hezbollah moves beyond that river in Lebanon, I don't know the name of the river, but there's a river that kind of separates southern Lebanon from the rest of Lebanon. If they don't move beyond that, more north of that, and quit their attacks, Israel is going to go in there and take care of Hezbollah and probably demolish Lebanon in the process of that. I could also see that spilling over into Syria, where they take out Damascus in an Isaiah 17 scenario.
Yep.
And with
Iran just won't sit back and cop that. Iran's behind the Hezbollah.
With the conflicts that they've had over the last 13 years or so, much of what Assad has had to do is to put things underground to protect it from Israeli airstrikes. So it could very easily be that and just like in Hamas, the way that they've been building they built a headquarters for Hamas under a hospital.
Yeah,
I can imagine that Bashar Assad has for decades been putting things under Damascus so that it would be the Israelis wouldn't bomb it because the Israelis are loath to bomb and take innocent lives or civilians. They're hiding these things underneath the city, and then when they finally are pressed to attack Syria or fight back, it may be one bomb. It just triggers something underneath Damascus, and next thing you know, that city is just a chemical cauldron of fire and toxic whatever, and you're never going to live there again. It's the new Chernobyl of the Middle East. So I could see that happening this year as well. Will it happen? I have no idea, but it seems likely.
Absolutely. Well, before we move into Q&A, Pete, do you have any final closing thoughts or observations you'd like to make to try and wrap this up?
How are they going to ban homelessness while you got 8 million illegal immigrants in your country? I can't see them doing it. Oh, they want to fill up the FEMA camps. Bingo. Time to fill up the FEMA camps.
No, I think I said it earlier. Just, we know we're in the season. We don't know the exact time of the Lord's return, but we sense it. I think collectively we can sense the nearness of it, and I think we can see the collapsing of all these pillars and that used to uphold our society are now beginning to crumble. Everything from marriage to birth to weddings to sports to whatever. It's all been tainted and corrupted and sour, and things are sour now. Much like the little book that John had to eat, it was sweet in the mouth and it was just turned his stomach sour. I think we're in that same point where everything is just turned sour, and we're all just like groaning under this weight of this oppressiveness of the wicked. And I would just say to everybody listening to keep encouraging and exhorting each other, lean into the storm, embrace the suck. Just realize that however bad it is where you are, just realize this is a momentary thing that's going to pass, and that our Lord's return is very, very soon.
Amen. I love the thought that no matter how ugly our life gets, and some people just live in tremendous tragedy for decades on end, just pain upon pain upon pain. But when you put it in a scale and you compare it to just 1 million years of eternity, it's only a drop in the bucket. And we have billions and trillions and quadrillions of years coming.
Yeah.
Amen. Super excited about that.
Well, are the questions ready to go? Okay, well, we'll just keep the conversation flowing for another minute or two here. We're waiting on the questions coming in, but when the questions come in, then we'll have our standard Q&A situation. Okay, well, the questions are sent. So now, you know, it's funny. Google used to be so fast that I'd send an email and it would show up within 2 seconds. Now, I don't know what's going on, but there are times lately when people have sent me emails and I wait 5 or 10 minutes for that email to come in.
Yeah, and we're entering a solar maximum this year, so solar activity, you know, I liken when we think about how fast things are moving, if things aren't, if it's the right thing at the wrong time, and I think you and I talked about this before, God will find a way to slow that thing down or to pause it or however he needs to do it. And I think solar storms could certainly be a way that disrupts the global technology for a while. You know, it could be a temporary thing, could shut things down for a while. So, you know, as fast as we are moving, digitally speaking, God could still slow those things down with a good solar storm, you know, X-class solar storm, you know, so maybe that's impacting Google right now. I have no idea, but.
All right, well, we got the questions. Here's the first one. How many decades should people pray for healing before thinking that maybe they just failed in life or they can't get it right and they should just give up praying? Or, you know, maybe realize that God wants to call them home early. That'd be a painful question or a painful situation to face, but what do you think?
I would think that God, you know, never gives us more than we can handle. And I'm thinking of Paul's prayer for this thorn in his side that he was having issue with, whatever it was, we don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a physical pain, like, you know, an illness or a chronic thing or speech impediment, whatever it was something that he had prayed for and it wasn't changed. But I do think that it creates in us a uniqueness. Every one of us goes through, we all share the same things, right? We all share, we all kind of look the same in terms we're bipedal, we're humanoid, we have eyes, hair, brain, etc. We all live in a society, generally speaking, with parents and with relatives and with friends in a house, and we go out to eat. We all kind of are moving in the same direction that way. But what seems very unique to us is our pains and those things that the struggles that I go through, you're not going through, or that anybody else is going through, that our struggles are unique to us, and that God allows these things in us to create I don't want to say a variety, but to create I don't know how to put this. I know what I want to say, I don't know how to say it.
Yeah.
To create this body of.
Okay, guys, we're doing Q&A. So they've already spoke about what's coming our way. So I might switch to something else, guys. That was pretty interesting, though. They covered everything. Okay, hang on.
To us, and that.
Okay.
Before in-agency calendar. Welcome to Prophecy Club. Our topic today is Russia is going to attack America in 2024, so says this report. Now, I'm going to give you actually two reasons why it might happen then, and I'm also going to say we better be praying it doesn't. Most of the time, I don't think it's that close, but I'm going to show you a couple of reasons why I could be wrong. It could be that Russia will attack us in 2024. And before we get started, this is our once in a year time where we ask people to support us. We only do this once a year. And our goal is to raise $77,000 so that we can advertise on the platforms that we're on. Just because you're on a platform does not mean anybody's going to find you. I mean, how many people would
Yeah, Prophecy Club's reminded us of vast, doesn't it?
know to do a search for Prophecy Club? If they didn't know Prophecy Club, they wouldn't do a search for it. So we have to advertise. And we're asking your prayers and your support that we can get $77,000
Yep.
so we could use that for advertising over the next year. And you can do that. See that QR code at the bottom? All you got to do is act like you can take a picture of that with your cell phone. It draws a little yellow box around it, touch the yellow box, and zoom. It takes you off and you can make a donation. And if God has blessed you and you can help us, I would very, very much appreciate your help. Okay, so on to the point. This is December 11th from Hal Turner. Headline: We have a problem. The actual war invasion of the USA is planned, and now we have a date range. Incredible
Wow.
source, okay?
Did you hear that? Let's hear that again.
I appreciate your help. Okay, so on to the point. This is December 11th from Hal Turner. Headline: We have a problem. The actual war invasion of the USA is planned, and now we have a date range.
Wow.
Credible source, okay? America says we have a problem. While it's long been rumored that foreign countries are planning to invade the continental USA, we've never seen evidence of any such actual planning until now. For years, we've heard rumors of Chinese troops being massed in southern central Mexico, but never found any proof to bolster such claims. But 2 years ago or so, we found that the Prime Minister Trudeau of Canada actually signed a treaty with China allowing deployment of People's Liberation Army troops in Canada. It's not the first time we heard this. And the treaty prohibits local Canadian governments from having any say where their troops are, what they do while in Canada. And that treaty has been verified.
So Canada's given Chinese free reign in their country. Wow.
It is real. And if that's all we had, then we could go on to lunch. But that's not. There's more. There's problems. So if anyone believes that the rumor about Chinese troops in southern Mexico, we already have confirmation they're entering Canada. That will mean invasion of the continental USA would be possible from both the north and the south. Then, two, for years we've heard rumors that Venezuela would send troops to Cuba to join the Cuban troops to invade Florida and Cuba, but zero evidence of any such planning has ever been offered or produced by anyone. However, Vicky Goforth Parnell says that Venezuela and Cuba are part of the invasion force, and Dimitri was specifically told Cuba would be one of them. Now, though, we have something very real from inside, deep inside Russian intelligence. Below, from inside the Russian FSB, we now have concrete proof of an actual invasion of the United States of America is in fact, I'll say it again, an actual invasion of the United States of America is in fact being planned, and the date range for this invasion has already been decided. It appears we have less than 1 year. I'll
Wow.
read it again.
Wow.
An invasion of the United States of America is in fact being planned, and the date range for that invasion has already been decided, and it appears we have less than 1 year. The evidence obtained from the inside Department C of the Central Security Service of the FSB in Russia appears below. He says, below are some images from the Russian FSB 2024 in-agency calendar. They show a strong President Putin exaggerated on the cover as shown above, and I'll show you just a second, and various drawings of war scenes into mid-2024. Now, here are the pictures. Well, here, let me show you this. Let me get the pictures here. He says, I respectfully remind you that over a year before Russia sent his army into Ukraine, then communist loudmouth Vladimir Zhirinovsky publicly announced that the real trouble for Ukraine would, quote, begun on February 24th of the following year. And as we now all know, he was only 2 days off because Russia entered Ukraine on February 22 of 2022. Meaning, Russia sometimes tells what they're going to do. So now we see that such things are planned years in advance. And now we see what's being planned for November 2024 on a Russian intelligence interagency calendar. So here,
November 2024, which means the elections won't be held. I knew they wouldn't be. If this is right, there's no more elections for you guys.
here's a picture of a strong Vladimir Putin. This is their calendar. This is the inside agency of the FSB. And it has the date 2024. And you see Putin there is all muscled up. Now let's go to the next one. So this one is June and July. June is showing that the army is at peace. He's holding a cap. July shows that now there is war. And I don't think that's talking
Oh,
about Ukraine.
no way.
But here's the big bugaboo. And I had to look this up. And I confirmed it several different ways. This calendar,
Wow, this is stunning.
the calendar down here, right here. Because only one of them ends for 30 days on a Saturday, I believe it is. And that's November 2024. And you see a Russian FSB or a Russian military guy standing here with a weapon. Up here you see a drone. Up here you see a helicopter. And this is the Russian army symbol. Then this is a picture that I took off the internet of the Capitol, the United States Capitol building. A couple of things I want you to notice.
Wow.
See the statue, the round thing here, the round here, round here, round here, round here, the windows. See this little drawing here, this little drawing here. You see the flag here, you see the flag here. See this uptick here, same thing here. You see the pillars, same number of pillars, these two things. That is a drawing of our Capitol building. And it shows that the Russians are there. So they're saying that by November of 2024, Russia plans to have invaded
Wow.
America. By Russia, 2024. Okay, now, I realize some of you may be saying, rubbish. You know, no, first of all, I can't believe how many people do not believe Russia would ever invade America. Of course, a lot of people think that America is too big to fall, too big to fail. Well,
Barry, there's actually 2 Chinese generals that got caught on a hot mic, meaning they didn't know the mic was on, saying that the US has been told to stand down from California to the Rocky Mountains. So when China invades, they're going to get no resistance until they get to the Rocky Mountains.
going to have their time to repent, aren't they? So I went to Dimitri's website just today to verify this, and this is actually copied off the website. On July 24th, 1984, Dimitri and his entire family were expelled from Romania. It tells the rest of it, which I'll skip. Then on August 3rd of 1984, they arrived on American soil. So that's August 3rd, 1984. If you add 40 years, August 3rd comes up 2024. So all of a sudden, this might not be out of line.
Wow.
So was the internal revolution again? Remember, what was Dimitri Duduman told? Let me tell you the story. So Dimitri was kicked out of Russia, and maybe it's time for me to do the whole story again. Which, by the way, you can get in God's Warning to America, that book at prophecyclub.com. Anyway, the angel Gabriel came to him. He said, "Get beside me." He said, "I don't know what it was." He said, "But I got beside this angel," and he said, "It was something like a pillow on fire. Only thing I can remember is he controlled it with his left hand." Okay. And he said, he took and showed me all of California on Las Vegas. He said, "You see what I've shown you? This is Sodom and Gomorrah. And one day it will burn." Then he took and showed him New York and Florida. He said, "You see what I've shown you? All of this is Sodom and Gomorrah. And one day it will burn." He said, "How will it burn?
I tell you.
Now here's the thing. He said, the fall of America will start with an internal revolution in America. Now stop. For all those years, I thought an internal revolution meant maybe like, riot in the streets. Finally, I actually looked up what does the word revolution mean. It is the violent overthrow of the government by the people of that nation. And in most cases, it is the military overthrowing the government. Bingo. That just happens to be the plan. The fall of America will start with an internal revolution in America started by the communists. Now, what is that? I think that's these 4 different indictments they're coming against Trump with. And they're basically saying, we will tear down America before we'll let Trump get back in the White House. And so the good guys are saying, okay, let's do it. There's about to be, and maybe I should even bring that in. I don't know about that. But if I have time, I will jump in and show you something else that confirms that. So anyway, let's start again here. The fall of America will start with an internal revolution in America, started by the communists. Some of the people will start fighting against the government. Means the good guys go in and kick out the bad guys. And then I think when it says some of the people start fighting against the government, I think that those are all the illegal aliens and also the evil people inside America that rise up against the government. And remember, yesterday I showed you one of the cards was resistors of the resistors. I think is the way the card was. There it is. Counter revolution. So I think that some of the people start fighting against the government. In other words, the good guys, the military, the good guys, rise up, kick out the bad guys, but immediately the bad guys within the nation start rising up and they start blowing up bridges, movie theaters. I mean, it is war. Probably in 2024, we're going to be looking at war like we have never seen in our nation. As a matter of fact, Dana Coverstone just sent me a new dream, which I plan to have on in tomorrow's program. At least that's the plan. And it's confirming that. And 2024 is going to be not a good year. That is, unless you want to see a lot of change. It's going to be a year of a lot of change. Okay, so let's go back to this. The fall of America will start with an internal revolution in America started by the communists or started by the Democrats. Some of the people will start fighting against the government. The government will be busy with internal problems. Then from the oceans, Russia, Cuba, Nicaragua, Central America, Mexico, and 2 other countries will attack and defeat America in one day, in 1 hour, so great riches will come to naught. So what he's saying is that August 3rd could be that day. And what Russia is saying is that by November, they plan to be on American soil. Is that true or is that rubbish? I hope it's rubbish because I hope we can pray and it'll stop it. But does it sound plausible? Yeah. Realistic? Yeah. Possible? Yeah. Then God will raise up China and Japan and many of the nations. They'll go against the Russians and defeat the Russians. They'll back them to the gates of Paris where they sign a peace treaty, but they make the Russians their leader. With all the nations as the Russians as their leader, go down to attack Israel. It's Armageddon. It's not that they want to, but God makes them. It's the hook in the jaw. God dries up their oil because he gives it all to Israel, I think. Ezekiel 38:4 says, I'll put a hook in your jaw. And the oil, where it's found in Israel, is in the shape of a fish hook. All the nations with Russians as their leader go down to attack Israel. It's not that they want to, God makes them. Israel can't count with the help of the Jews in America. So should Christ the Messiah. And Jesus returns on the clouds and defeats the armies of the world. It's Armageddon. So I pulled this up right quick for you. The U.S. is headed for gunfight at the OK Corral. The undeclared civil war in the U.S., that's right, there really is an undeclared civil war in the U.S., is headed for a showdown that will involve lots of nighttime shootouts. On one side, the Satanists, who have used these big companies, which I should not say that name, to compile a list of Americans who they want to kill in order to stay in power. On the other side are patriots, the white hats, with a list of over 1 million sealed indictments that they want to act on in order to liberate the U.S. from satanic rule. I believe that's exactly correct.
Yeah, you done it, Diane, not me.
In other words, The fall of America will start with an internal revolution. The good guys kick out the bad guys. But then the bad guys say, we're not going to take it laying down. And they rise up with all of their evil people that they have inside of America. Many of them came over the border. Many of them were given encoded, encrypted cell phones and will be contacted and probably trained. And they're probably getting trained right now and probably getting armed right now, ready for this. And remember, the cabal has a time machine. They have a looking glass.
Yeah.
They can see into the future. They know what's coming. Now, probably the good guys that are going to take over America and try to clean it up don't have that, and they don't understand. They certainly don't listen to prophets like our ministries. And so, consequently, they don't know that the bad guys know their plans and know what they're going to do. All right, so now, the next thing I'm going to have to go through something. Here, let me show you what I'm about to show you. Okay, so I'm about to show you this. We've talked about it. This. We're talking about it again briefly and this, but then I'm going to tie together with this. So what this may be saying is that these are the things that's about to happen for 2024. But I have to give you a little background for me to cover this. Okay, so let's go back to this. You remember this was January. As a matter of fact, let me put them in the correct order here. Okay, so in April 15th of 2002, the Lord spoke to Leslie. I know I've covered it many times, but I got to go through this for you to understand what I'm trying to say here. That she was told that Arafat would go into the hospital, and it was fulfilled about 2 years later, meaning this prophecy will stand. She said that she was told that Israel will give the Palestinians a state. I think right now this war that's going on between Gaza and Israel, or Hamas and Israel right now, at the end of it, Israel will give the Palestinians a state. The Palestinian state will be a temporary measure to allow the Israelis to strengthen the military. Then oil, massive amounts of high-pressure oil will be found in Israel. And that oil is going to do two things. It's going to give Israel the money to build up their military, because I think at the end of this war, they're going to say they can't fight all of Islam. So for them to fight all of Islam, they have got to build up their military massively, along with, remember the headline that Prophet John Paul Jackson was shown, that Israel will have a secret weapon. So that's going to help them, and they will defeat all of the Islamic nations surrounding Israel. Okay, well, to make the Jews willing to fight for the land, then Israel and America will go against most of the rest of the Arab world. Now, to me, I don't see how even oil can be discovered in Israel. I mean, 2024 would be really early. And then even if it's found in January of 2024, it's going to take a while for them to build up their military. So I don't see how this or Russia could attack America in 2024. I'll just say, to me, it seems like it's too soon. But nevertheless, I'm reporting what I found. So Israel and America would go against most of the rest of the Arab world. Then in 2006, she was shown these headlines, that Omer ushers in Palestinian state. Now, we think the Omer is the counting of the Omer, which are the 49 days between first fruits and Passover. Say that wrong. Between first fruits and Pentecost, which in 2024 is April the 25th through June the 13th. So, very possible that the...
Busted, Diane, you're really Lex Luthor. Okay, I just busted you.
War with Israel will come to conclusion somewhere in February and April, maybe even May. Excuse me, and then they will give the Palestinians a state. When they do, now I always thought this catastrophe hits America. I thought the word catastrophe was probably the earthquake, and it may be. But then we found out about Operation Catastrophe, and that's the plan to set off some 35 suitcase nukes all the same day, all across America.
I don't know
so that
about
could be
that.
what catastrophe is too. We don't know. I'm going to tie this together in just a second. Then one of America's greatest times of need, so America calls on the world to help her, and her good friend Israel doesn't want to help. Why? Because we just twisted her arm and made her give the Palestinians a state. Then Israel will be attacked. America sends troops. That's the start of this war here. Israel and America will go against most of the rest of the Arab world. Then chaos reigns as Americans protest help to Israel. So a lot of the anti-Semites we've seen here since the Gaza war started, a lot of them rise up and protest, and then that's the end of America because it says it will start with an internal revolution in America. Now, if we put that together, it may look something like this, and this is the important point that I saw in the broadcast. Okay, if you watched yesterday's program, or maybe the day before,
Wow, just reading his first bit on the first quarter. He's laid this out pretty good. This will be good, guys.
called Bank Fail. Bank Fail. If you watched it, go watch it. It says that the financial system in America could, and these reports actually say it will collapse this Friday. It says that this Thursday, 12 of the banks are going to turn off their credit card services. Well, that's going to cause a big problem. Now, that remains to be seen if it actually happens. Then the first quarter, we do know that BRICS asset-backed currency comes online. That's going to begin to kill the dollar. Dollar is circumvented by many nations. Dollar falls instantly, first by 30%, then to 50%, 75%, actually was 66%, Dana Coverstone saw, then finally down to zero. Then in the second quarter is probably when Omer is probably the counting of the Omer. The 49 days for first fruits Pentecost. So that would very well fit. In other words, they get done with cleaning Gaza and then decide to give the Palestinians a state. So America twists Israel arm. Israel war continues with them giving the Palestinians a state. The next day, God hits America with a New Madrid fault, earthquake, maybe more. It also could be that 35 suitcase nukes hit America in the second half of 2024 called Operation Catastrophe. So, again, do I know this? No. God hadn't told me exactly any dates. I'm guessing. I think it's a good guess. But in case you want to know what I think, this is what I think. Do I know this? No, I do not. No, this is not a prophecy. If it didn't come to pass, don't complain to me. I'm trying to do my best to try to fill in some blanks. Third quarter, Dimitri was given the warning by Gabriel August 3rd of 1984. So I personally have to wonder if the internal revolution will start August 3rd, 2024, which would be 40 years later.
Guys, you know how I get on Muslim versus Christian debate sites on Facebook? When they go on about Christians singing and dancing in church, I post that Muslim techno dance. They hate it.
The internal revolution, or return of Trump as king of the new Republic of the United States, not president,
I'm the DJ, Diane.
may happen as a result of that in August. Now, then, of course, we would see massive roundup, that's execution as America strives to rid itself of evil, but of course they failed. Now, I put here Russia attacks and destroys America in 1 hour in the fourth quarter, which of course would confirm these dates, which would also confirm this date. Now, do I know anything that's going to happen? No, I don't. God has not told me anything. I keep asking, but he holds his secrets pretty close to him. So, in summary, Russia says by this, they plan to be on American soil in November 2024. Here it says that if it's exactly 40 years later, or even in the ballpark, from 84 to 24, that's 40 years. So that would fit. Now, am I saying that there's going to be an internal revolution August 3rd, 2024? No. Am I saying that it's even going to be in 2024? No, I don't know. God has not told me. I'm just trying to be a good watchman, trying to give you some guesses. But I'll tell you what.
Tally, you can bet it's not rap music.
I think a lot of these things that were shown to Chris Reed give us an order when they're going to happen. Now, you remember this. We talked about this. Okay, so Chris Reed, an angel visits him with a $50 bill, tears off a third. That confirms the value of the dollar drops by 1/3. Then the headline on the newspapers that started getting handed to him was U.S. dollar drops 30% in value. Middle Eastern oil strikes deal with China instead of the U.S. Okay, we can almost see that on a headline right now. Perfect storm, inflation reaches new high. We expect that. That's probably the first quarter. Food shortage crisis, that's probably first quarter. Riots, civil unrest as citizens demand entitlement checks could be first quarter, could also be second quarter. Israeli-Palestinian two-state solution reached, that's probably second quarter. Major earthquake hits middle of the U.S., that's probably second quarter. America in pieces, more states secede, probably second quarter, but it could be third quarter during the internal revolution. And then here is the internal revolution. The U.S. military takes charge as uncertainty looms over the federal government. There you go. And then a new dollar bill is seen on a cell phone. Now, remember the young man that had a dream that it wasn't a cell phone. You couldn't make phone calls on it. It was only for buying and selling things. That makes sense too. A new currency for a renewed nation, and then people start growing their food again. So all of this, these
Diane, I'll be the one on the sideline kicking them up the butt as they go past me.
dates out here, they're just guesses, but boy, they could be very accurate. So what do? First of all, if you have not already gone and got yourself some long-term storage food at Joseph Kitchen, I think I made a mistake. If you have not done that, you want to get yourself a machine package, and then you decide how much food you want from there. Machine package grinds the wheat berries into flour, put that into a bread machine, push a button 2 hours, and 40 minutes later, you have a nice hot loaf of whole wheat bread. That's what I have for most every breakfast and lunch. It's good for you. And then decide how much food you want out here. They have videos tell you all about it. This is a loaf of bread that I actually cook. I make it every 2 weeks. I make 2 loaves every 2 weeks, and that lasts me and Leslie. Also, I recommend to go to prophecyclubgold.com, and I know several people approach me, hey, what's wrong? Was there a problem? No, there wasn't a problem. We just decided to switch companies, switch sponsors. Not a problem. These are good people. They specialize in getting your money out of your IRA, out of your 401k. And remember that Shane Warren said that the Lord told him that silver will skyrocket far more than gold. Give them a call, prophecyclubgold.com, and also their phone number is 800-200-4653. 800-200-4653. Give them a call. You don't have to get anything. Just call and say, okay, this is my situation. This is how much money I got. This is where I got it. What can you do to help? What do you suggest? Give them a call.
Okay, I was showing this one yesterday before the stream froze up and I had to hang up. So we'll do it now. Start again.
It's hearing them speak in their own. Welcome to the Prophecy Club. Our topic today is the 9 greatest deceptions in the tribulation. In other words, we're going to be looking at these in, sad to say, the near future.
Good night, Di.
All of this comes from my book, Miss the Mark. You may be asking, what is the most important information that every beating heart on the globe must know with the things that are coming? Well, the most important thing, of course, is to have Jesus in your heart. But the second most important thing is don't take the mark of the beast, because those people taking the mark of the beast do not get soul death. They are tossed into the lake that burns with fire and brimstone with the beast and the false prophet. Then 1,000 years later, Lucifer is added to them. And there's no escape. It's total torment. What is torment? Torment means that it's total pain. So try to imagine being burned all of your body for all eternity, no escape, no hope of escape. That's what we're talking about. And you can get my book, Miss the Mark, at prophecyclub.com. Now, why am I reading from this book today? Because I started to read the direct information that I got, that I put in the book, and I realized I can't read this. If I start putting this stuff on the program, some of the platforms will take me off. They'll either delete the video or maybe even delete the whole channel. So these are the books and these are the offers that you can go to Prophecy Club and get. And the very, very best offer, this one right here. Get one set of each of these 5 books. Gift of $100 is like 40 books. So it gives you a lot of extra books to hand away, presents, gifts, and maybe even to your pastor. Okay, so let's get started. So I started to talk about this. I knew that it'd get me in trouble. So I thought, well, probably the safest way to do this would be just take the text from my book, Mr. Mark, because I've already filtered down and removed the words, and I've changed it in such a way to where it'll be acceptable to the platforms, but it still gets the point across.
Good night, Johnny.
All right, so this is from my book, Mr. Mark. Remember, the devil has been around since before mankind was created, and he is exceedingly cunning and intelligent, far beyond humans. He has a well-dressed plan of deception so good, it will trick almost everyone on earth into worshiping him. The following are only a few of his tactics to avoid. He may use more. Be aware of them. Don't be surprised. Expect them, and do not fall for the greatest deceptions in human history. I first heard about them from a man I interviewed on the radio back in the early 1990s. He was speaking everywhere then, but he was arrested, then released, died of a heart attack 2 days later. Again, I'm not going to tell you his name. Many people believe that he was killed because he was disclosing the darkest secrets of the devil on radio, and I agree. So I know that what I'm revealing to you is serious. I know it's true, not because the man was killed. I know it's true because I found verification of every one of these in the scriptures of truth. Now change the wording by bringing the same point to light straight from the Bible. He made several points I would not have seen, so the Lord did bless him. I'm about to expose the devil's darkest plans to deceive mankind in the days of the tribulation. The first one is what I'm going to call the archaeology deception. So picture this. The fake news, CNN, source of all truth on the other course, not, announcing a great earthquake has just hit. A few days later, a great discovery is made. An underground chamber was discovered, and in this chamber we found these tablets. We found this and that, this and that, this ancient thing, and it proves that all of this in the Bible is not true. All, not just Christians, but all of the religions of the world are all wrong. That's what they're going to say. All of the Muslims were lied to, the Satanists lied to, Hindus lied to, all Christians. You're all lied to.
Mm-hmm.
All the Jesus stuff is all garbage. Proof, we got it right here. You've been lied to. This man, our world great leader, he's really God. So much so that if it were possible, it would deceive even the very elect. So expect earthquakes to supposedly reveal new discoveries of ancient artifacts designed to destroy the foundations of all religions. Expect to hear, we've all been mistaken. We misunderstand. We didn't have all the information. Don't be fooled. Expect a wonderful plan so good that over 95% of the humans on the planet will quickly accept it as proof beyond any reasonable doubt, saying past beliefs and laws were all inaccurate or missing information. The news will report a great discovery of information so convincing that most people on the earth will accept it as correct. So expect the new society to correct old errors with new revelations from the one true God, new laws, new standards, so the world can finally live in peace. Remember, Daniel says, by peace he shall destroy many.
Mm-hmm.
The real Ark of the Covenant has been discovered. Now, remember, I told you August 8th, 2015, Saturday night.
Yeah, Ron White found the ark. Remember, guys?
I said, Lord, I don't even think to say for the sermon tomorrow morning what he was saying. I heard words. And he said, this is the time of miracles. As the judgment hits, so are my miracles. Miracles like no one is saying going all the way back to Adam and Eve. You tell them, I will never leave them nor forsake them. But I'm going to meet the devil inch for inch, step for step, pound for pound. Everything he does, I'm going to meet him. Meaning, when they pull out these archaeological discoveries that
Talia, at Denver Airport, they've got this gargoyle, a statue of a gargoyle that actually talks, and you ask it questions, and it's not a recorder, and it actually answers your questions. And that it's a gargoyle, and it looks like the image of a beast. That's why I say that. It's artificial intelligence. That's why I say that.
disproves the Ten Commandments, that disproves the Ark of the Covenant, that disproves Jesus was the Lamb of God, God is going to pull out proof that Jesus was the Lamb of God, did die on the cross. The rocks that ran
I'll see if I can find the link
to drip down. I talked about this past Sunday morning, by the way. So just go and watch it. It's 45 minutes, maybe even 50 minutes of awesome information talking about the blood on the Ark of the Covenant. But let's go on. So from 1989 to 1999, I was involved with a wonderful group called the Full Gospel Businessmen's Fellowship. And they helped me discover many wonderful gifts and blessings of the Lord. And I'm very thankful for this divine organization. Our chapter had invited Ron White to speak in Omaha, Nebraska. At the speaking engagement, Ron showed a 90-minute video called Presentations of Discoveries, which is available at the link below. Ron White's presentation displayed evidences of Noah's Ark, Sodom and Gomorrah, the Red Sea crossing, Mount Sinai, the Ark of the Covenant, the complete overview of the discoveries, ideal for sharing with groups. And in 1991, he sent out a letter. I received one of his newsletters that included an invitation for people to go on a tour to see these discoveries. Well, I knew I didn't have the funds, but I also said, I'm going on the tour. Walked into the bathroom where Leslie was getting ready, and I said,
yeah, they do hostage stuff, eh? I know about that scam. Pretty serious.
if I don't have the big mistake, if I don't have the money for you to go, but I'm going on this tour. Leslie looked at it and says, I'm going to. Well, God is perfect.
Amen.
And in his perfect will, he sent the funds for both of us to go, so we went. That Christmas, I got a VCR recorder as a Christmas gift. And in those days, they were very expensive. I wouldn't have been able to afford one, but I got it for Christmas. I wanted to make sure that I got every minute of what Ron White said, so I purchased about 15 of these high-quality VHS tapes at a nice camera shop. At the time, I thought it was all for my personal interest. I could never have dreamed it would be information to win thousands upon thousands of Christ. The videos of the tour have now been edited into one 2.5-hour DVD, available at prophecyclub.com, or you can watch it instantly at watchprophecyclub.com. It's called Archaeology Confirms the Bible. The short version of the tour is this. We went to what I believe is the real Noah's Ark, walked all over it. I brought back a piece of it I unofficially believe to be petrified wood. We saw its anchor stones, Gomorrah, the rock of Moses, Gomorrah, the rock that Moses struck, giant bones of pre-flood people, the crossing side of the Red Sea, the archaeological evidence of the garden tomb of Jesus at Golgotha. If you like facts, this video is for you. The most important part of the tour, however, was the information about the Ark of the Covenant. When the world sees the information regarding the Ark of the Covenant, it will remove all doubt that this is the genuine Ark of the Covenant.
Because they got Christ's blood on it, and when they tested the blood, it had no male DNA in it.
That's the Bible is true. When the world can see for themselves the hard evidence of the 3 cross holes, the 3 signs, the crack, the blood on the crack,
Yeah,
the blood on the cover of the Ark of the Covenant, the stone lid cracked opening, allowing the blood through, and the blood on the west side of the Ark of the Covenant, thus fulfilling the Levitical covenants that must be fulfilled if Jesus really was the Lamb of God. And of course, yes, he was. Again, I talk about this far more detail in the Sunday this past Sunday's, what was it, Sunday? Yeah, it was. Yeah, this Sunday, which, by the way, the electricity went off right in the middle of the sermon, so, but I think I got the most of it. Anyway, this is a drawing, so let me explain. The Bible says that three signs were put up when Jesus was on the cross. And the Bible also says that the rocks were rent. Well, we do know now that it's about 20 feet below that Jeremiah arranged to have the Ark of the Covenant put there some 600 years before Jesus was crucified.
Wow.
And when the blood, of course, the centurion ran the blood,
I might do a Ron Wyatt stream tomorrow. I haven't done one for a few months, probably 2 years. I might do another one tomorrow.
poured into his, I believe, his left chest, because that's where the heart is.
Yeah.
To the center of his heart, out came blood and water. We know that when a person dies, the platelets separate and the blood is like chunky. Okay, it has water and it has chunks of blood. And that blood came out of Jesus, ran down the left side of the cross hole, down 20 feet through the stone, and then the lid of the stone box that contained the Ark of the Covenant cracked at exactly the right place so that the blood landed on the
Mercy
west
seat.
side of the Ark of the Covenant.
The mercy
Again, I
seat.
explained that Sunday. Now let's go to the second deception, Starlink, the new 5G internet. There are two big worldwide technologies being put in place, which when linked together, will cause many people to accept the beast. Elon Musk just revealed new details about Starlink, a new plan to surround the Earth with 12,000 high-speed internet satellites. These satellites are low Earth orbiting satellites designed to last from 18 months to 5 years. When they wear out, they will fall back harmlessly into the atmosphere and burn up. Now, let's talk about the space show, because that relates. Let's picture this. We're now beginning the 2020s. This is when I wrote the book, okay? There are about 12,000 satellites above the Earth, covering every square inch of the globe, reaching just about every computer chip and everything. We know each satellite has radio antenna broadcasting to Earth. So, what if they also installed some antenna capable of broadcasting a signal at the same frequency that our brain operates on? We've known for years that even a simple police radar can project voice audio through the air, sounding as if we are hearing it inside of our skull. We know this. So what's to say they don't already have that technology on all of these satellites too? So at any point in time, they can cause the face of God to appear in the sky and a voice to be heard in everyone's head. These satellites broadcast downward. It is not just the cell phones that will pick it up, but also our brains in our skull. So one night, all the world sees the laser image of God in the sky, and hears the voice of God, kind of like Hitler would love it, to try to mention the beast declaring, okay, tonight, I'm going to prove to you that I'm God. That night, all around the globe, the sky, it's the face of God. All over the globe, the face of God is speaking to people, and it's hearing them speak in their own specific local, regional language, telling them that the beast is really God. Saying this is God speaking. Next, deception. Deception by miracles. There are two leaders we must be aware of. The political beast known as the Antichrist, which will rule the political world for at least 3.5 years. We will also see a religious beast known as the false prophet, which will rule the false religions, especially the Catholic Church. Many people point out the errors of the Catholic Church, and I do think the Catholic Church has their share of sins as outlined in the entire chapter of Revelation 17. But I also think there are some very good Catholics that really love Jesus with all their heart. Every church has its problems, including the Spirit of Prophecy Church. The false prophet will hijack the Catholic Church and use it for evil. Not all Catholics are bad. As a matter of fact, many people, including Catholics, will surrender their life for Jesus. rather than accept the Antichrist and the mark. Jesus pulls his bride from all nations, kindreds, people, and tongues, including Catholics. Revelation 13 through 14 says, "And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast." Jump to Revelation 16:13 says, "And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are the spirits of devils working miracles, which go forth into the kings of the earth and of the whole world, to gather them to the battle of the great day of God Almighty." Try to imagine deceptions directly from the devil and his fallen angels. Now let's go to the next deception, which apparently may be happening any day. Matter of fact, don't be surprised to see a lot of this happen in 2024. It's the alien revelation or disclosure.
Yeah,
You're not being surprised
that's really ramping up, isn't it, guys? The disclosure.
to see aliens from another planet or other dimensions working with the new society. Do not believe their lies. Expect they may make open contact. In other words, if an alien craft were to land down on the White House lawn, Supreme Court, maybe even near your house, pop the hatch and all of a sudden jump out and say, "We're here, we're really alive, and we're here to help mankind. We're here to be friends with Earth, to create a new society." How many people would believe that? Before we go further, your question should be, do aliens exist? The next answer is a simple one. Yes, the Bible says so. So don't be fooled when aliens from another world land in some kind of advanced spaceship, landing there from another place, bringing new technology, new solutions, and a new gospel and a new man God, pointing to the beast as the savior of the world. The devil is pulling at all stops. He's going to the bottom of the barrel, using his best deceptions. This is his time to deceive. But we're not going to believe it. We're going to stay with Jesus, the only man who can offer us eternal life for real. Jesus, the only man without sin, the only man whose blood dripped on the Ark of the Covenant, which was required to fulfill the covenants which make him the Lamb of God. So expect them to be invincible, to have the ability to take a bullet or an arrow, then be instantly healed. Don't be impressed. No, this is not Jesus. This is the plan of the devil to deceive. Joel 2:7 says, "They shall run like mighty men. They shall climb the wall like men of war. They shall march every one on his ways, and they shall not break their ranks. Neither shall one thrust another." In other words, they do as they're told. "They shall walk every one in his path, and when they fall upon a sword, they shall not be wounded." Instant healing. "They shall run to and fro in the city. They shall run upon the wall. They shall climb upon the houses. They shall enter in at the windows like a thief." Killing a lot of people. Now, let's talk about superhumans. So expect them to say, "Well, we seeded the earth. You're actually our creation." Expect them to come up with the ability, or show people the ability, to create life. And to make it even better, I suspect that they'll come up with a med bed where you lay in the bed for about 3 minutes. And the Lord told me, don't do it because it changes your DNA. If you change your DNA, you lose your salvation. Also expect them to come up with an injection that will heal your DNA, removing those things that are imperfect that we got from Adam when Adam and Eve fell, which makes us age. So expect them to come up with a way to reverse aging. You remember the scripture that says, "In those days shall men seek death, and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them." That paints a picture of pretty much everybody on earth has eternal life in this body. Expect them to say that they can create life and create it even better, even fix it. They may say they have improved humans and made them superhuman. They may be able to see in the dark, run without growing tired, have a photographic memory, move things with their minds, speak without talking or without moving their lips. Expect them to have many of the same powers the comic strip
Barry, what is AFK? And welcome to the channel, Lisa.
characters have. Scripture says that they will make a new kind of human, probably part human, part alien. This is the reason the scripture calls it an image of the beast, because it's not human like the rest of humankind. Now let's talk about the rapture deception. Now let me start.
Oh,
I love my rapture, my pre-trib believers. Okay, now,
actually, Barry, I look up links to posts when I do that. I'm looking up links to posts.
I hope you continue to follow us. Don't get mad at me. But I'm called to be a watchman. I've got to warn you. So, in my first book, The Secret Door, to understand Bible
That's
prophecy,
the
I
room,
gave
huh?
more understanding of the tribulation. That many Christians have been taught that before any trouble or the 7-year tribulation comes, Jesus is going to return to the sky and pull them off the earth so they can go to heaven. They don't have to go through any trouble. Then, after they're gone, then and only then, will the trouble tribulation begin. For now, let's talk about how a fake rapture could destroy the beliefs of millions of Christians. So let's suppose a few months after a few space shows were successful, and they've also pulled out the archaeological evidence to destroy people's belief in the Bible.
Yeah.
Then they put up another space show that makes it appear that millions of people are flying off the earth. It is in the middle of the tribulation, or maybe even later, millions of people are going up. They're seeing people going up in the air. They're going up all around the globe. They appear to be ascending. And then, of course, the source of all truth on earth, CNN, comes on and confirms it. Yes, CNN says people have just disappeared from off the earth, all around the earth. The rapture is true. It really happened. It really took place. And now the rapture believing Christians say, wait a minute. I was supposed to go. All of the Christians are supposed to go. What does that do to the faith of a lot of rapture believing Christians? Reality, nobody left the earth. I don't believe that we go to the marriage supper of the Lamb until about 4 months before Jesus returns. I've covered that many times. Get my book, by the way. I'll cover that in a second. Okay, so let me go. Now, this is only 6 of the 9 rapture things. I didn't have time to cover them all today. Archaeology. Some kind of archaeology artifact is found. Maybe many artifacts are found. Maybe many different places are found, all hidden there years ago by the devil. But the archaeology disproves the Bible. Then they come out with space shows. Space shows that show the face of God. They hear God speaking, saying, this guy over here, he's really the Son of God. Everybody got to listen to him. Then deception by great miracles and alien disclosure. About this time, aliens come down and say, look, we're the ones that seeded the earth. You actually are children. And
Tell you, they also reckon they can put vaxxers in the food now as well. So if you didn't take the vax, they can put it in the food as well now. I don't know if it's true, but that's a rumor.
we have a fix for your DNA. Take this injection or get in this med bed. We're going to fix you. They come up with all kinds of technology, anti-gravity, free energy, all kinds of things like that. How many people are going to say, wait a minute, there got to be something to this? They come up with superhumans. They show us Nephilim. They show that people get a shot or they lay in the med bed and their hair turns back to natural color. Teeth come back in that had been pulled or got carved out because of
Whatever.
cavities. Or maybe people got limbs or legs blown off in the war, or they had some kind of terrible, like a knee replacement. Who knows, okay? All of a sudden, they come out and they're totally 30 years old, whatever age they're
Hey,
going to be.
boss, good to see you, mate.
Many people are going to say, I don't believe them. The point is, most people will believe it. Superhumans. We created humans, and then the rapture deception. And this is only 6 of the 9 deceptions, which, by the way, if you want the rest of them, I didn't have time to cover them today, but get my book, Miss the Mark. Of the 4 books I've written, it is the #1 seller. It's a fast, easy read. If you give this to someone that, even if they're not a Christian, even if they worship another God, just ask them to read the first few pages. Because if they read the first few pages, they could probably read the rest of the book. If they read the rest of the book, they will never take that mark of the beast, and probably they will become a Christian. Now, you can get it at prophecyclub.com. 1 is $20. Don't do that, though. We don't expect people to get just 1. Instead, you get 10 for $3.50 each, 22, 25 each, 40 for $1.50 each. In other words, we want you to get them in sets. They come in shrink wrap sets of 10. While you're there, also look up my book, How Pre-Trib 1. Now, let me explain. This is the first book. This is the granddaddy. This is the one that explains prophecy. They all have the charts in the back of them, by the way. That is, if you get them from us, if you get them from Amazon, they don't have the charts in. Anyway, this one explains Bible prophecy. And it does not have the word rapture in it. Now, don't go into the rapture in this book. How Pre-Trib 1 explains the rapture. And it gives you several reasons scripturally why it's just not accurate. It's just not going to happen. Okay? Not going to happen. I do not believe when we go to the marriage supper of the Lamb 4 months before Jesus returns, I do not call that a rapture because, frankly, by that time, most Christians are going to be dead. And then the one I'm talking about today is called Miss the Mark. And I also wrote another one called Tribulation, Secrets, in Daniel. Not all of Daniel.
Wow.
It's just the part that we Christians that are going through the tribulation need to know. Best deal, 40 books, 1 set.
Boss, pretty sure they can send microwave waves in your heart and make you cook from inside. Pretty sure they can do that as well. Guys, I'm going to hang up when he's finished.
This is a shrink wrap set of 10, shrink wrap set of 10, shrink wrap set of 5, shrink wrap set of 10, shrink wrap set of 5. So you can get 40 books for a gift of $100 at prophecyclub.com. Gives you extras to give away because you start reading this stuff. Matter of fact, I probably should tell you this too. So in 2017, I memorized the book of Revelation. I didn't think anything special was going to happen, but something special did start happening. I started getting revelations. I mean, just wisdom, just information popped into my head I never had happen before. And I got 30 revelations, 2 visions, and an audible voice. One of the visions said I should write it in a book. This is the book. Understand Bible, a secret door to understand Bible prophecy. So I'd recommend you go to prophecyclub.com and get yourself probably the $100 offer. Also, we encourage you to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already and join Prophecy Club for $9.90 a month. Join it to be part of the souls and part of what we're doing. You can click on the little QR code at the bottom and you can subscribe, or you can join the Prophecy Club. So I also recommend you go to prophecyclubgold.com if you're thinking about getting precious metals.
Okay, guys, I'm going to call it. See you tomorrow, guys. Thanks for joining.
JosephKitchen.com to get yourself long-term storage food, and EMPShield.com promo code prophecy to get yourself a device